is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast.
We are recording on day one of What Idol. I know you were talking about that before recording. I don't know if you want to go over any of that again.
This will come out after What Idol is all said and done, but you can still go to the Dusty Wheels YouTube channel and check out the replays of the live streams, and at some point there will be a playlist of all the videos that were done, all concentrated together, so you don't have to watch the live stream and get the fragmentary version. I'm not sure when that playlist will get assembled, but it will be there on the Dusty Wheel channel eventually, or also on the What Idol channel. I think they have a YouTube channel now. Anyway, there will be links in the description. Go watch the replays and watch all the talent. I'm sure it was amazing. I'm recording this before I get bowled over by the 81 other entries.
Yeah, I'm just going to throw this in here.
82.
I can't believe you won. I can't believe you got second place. I can't believe you got third place. Oh my God, you got top 10. That's amazing. Wow, I can't believe you were top 20. That's incredible.
I love your optimism.
You really tried.
Thanks. There we go. That's about the tier I'm expecting to get. But I'm very much looking forward to the 81 other entries that are all going to be better than mine.
Well, there are 82.
Yeah, there's 82 entries. They got 78 last year and 82 this year. So it's going to be a long 3 days.
It's good to see it's not still like exploding in size, that it seems to have stabilized below 100, sort of in the high 80s, or, you know.
Yes, if this is the plateau, then I think we'll be all right,
Yeah.
Because it's going to be 2 long days of preliminary voting and then a very long Saturday. So by the time this episode comes out, I'm going to be so What-idled out. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be so low on serotonin because I'll have spent all of it on being excited for all the entries.
And again, it falls on my work week, so I probably won't get to listen to almost any of it until afterwards.
Yeah, that's a bummer. But yeah, that's really all that's relevant for this recording.
But what we wanted to do on episode 500 is, I kind of went back and looked at our patrons, and I really wanted to do a special shout out to just our top 10 and then our top 20 patrons. And so I looked, and we actually have 10 patrons who have given over $1,000 in the lifetime of the podcast.
Wow.
Which is incredible.
Wow.
And then we have 10 more patrons who have given over $500 over the lifetime of the podcast.
Also, wow.
That's a lot of money. Which is incredible. That's a lot of money. And for 500 episodes, of course, every dollar counts. Every dollar makes a difference. Every donation makes a difference. But those 20 of you out there have really formed the cornerstone of the income that this podcast has brought in. Some of you have just been giving for a very long time and it's added up. Some of you have given large amounts a few times. Some of you gave very early and stopped. Some of you started later and have continued to go. So, just a huge thank you to everybody out there who's contributed any amount over the lifetime of the podcast. It keeps us focused. It keeps us going, and we can't wait to see how far we can take this.
Wow, yeah, a lot of these over 1,000 names were patrons back when I was a patron.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
We were all patrons together. Damn, these are names from way back.
And these are people who just keep going, right? That's what's going on. That's how they get to these big numbers. God, I was listening back to Eye of the World and now Great Hunt because it's time for me to do a re-listen. In my life, I'm at that point. And I was just thinking how excited I was to talk to Aradia, you, about those early books. Especially now with how much more I know about the series. I feel like when I started it, I was still doing a lot of I don't know a lot about the series, despite having read it a bunch of times. There's a lot of things I don't know and aren't in my head. And assumptions we've made and discoveries we made. And going back and doing those first books, I'm kind of really excited to get to that point again. And so I'm not sure. I wasn't always sure I wanted to, right? I wasn't sure. I was going to get to the end of those books, but at least the books that me and Patrick did, I want to do with Aradia again.
That makes me happy because I really want to do them. Like experiencing them as a fan of the podcast when you guys still hadn't found your stride is going to be all different than swinging back around on yet another reread with like this full podcasting career behind me. Like I really, really want to be able to experience the first books the way I'm experiencing these later books. Like, I want that. I need that. And I mean, of course, I'm always going to carousel around forever and ever. It's the wheel of time. It never stops turning. So, yeah, definitely need to do that for the podcast. So I'm glad that you're having that change of heart.
And like, oh God, there was a scene again in Eye of the World where Nynaeve is like, shows up late and she's like, oh, I couldn't leave until my patient was feeling better. But then I was like, wait, she actually showed up kind of early. Did she heal that patient so she could leave and go ogle the Gleeman? Did she get angry and I was like, yes. I'm still catching shit.
Clearly.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah, totally.
And just how much smoother I am between Saidin and Saidar and just all the mistakes I made early on and all the questions I had early on, I feel like kept me from getting a super full understanding of those early books the way I do of these later ones.
Oh, I mean, when I've gone back to do like the rewind episodes, you know, like I hear little bits and pieces of what you and Patrick are saying when I do that. And yeah, getting Saidin and Saidar mixed up, like being confused about facts that we've now drilled into our heads, like by endless repetition, like
even the quality of the recordings.
Yeah, and like early versions of theories, like before they got to their finished form. It's just, oh my God, yeah, the quality, the audio quality. Like you can hear the room changing. You can hear the position of the mics changing and when the egg cartons go up and come down. And like, I mean, maybe that's just my ears because I have like producer ears at this point. But like, it's really, it's changed a lot. There's been a lot of change.
So yeah, now I'm looking at that and going like, okay, we've got like 3 more years before we finish the series, including New Spring, and then if we go out for 5 more books after that, that's like, oh, okay, we got another decade in us. God damn it!
It kind of seems that way.
Fuck! I'm never gonna be. This is. It's the podcast that never ends. I will. The wheel of time will keep turning. Will keep turning.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, and how? Yeah, Origins has come out. Yeah, and then we're getting to the point where like it'll be so long, right? Those first episodes were really all about like having a beer and drink, and now I don't even drink. Yeah.
You know,
and like
the books stay the same, but you don't. And that's part of the beauty of why we can keep reading them, even though, like, you know, we were talking an episode or 2 back about how, you know, you're like, you haven't gotten a tattoo yet because like you don't want to have something that asshole from 15 years ago decided was good for you.
Right.
And yet Wheel of Time somehow manages to continue to be relevant despite the fact that we keep changing and improving and becoming that. Wheel of Time continues to have something to offer. It's wild. Absolutely bonkers.
Maybe one day we'll actually get a good TV show of it.
Wow. I'm just gonna pretend that didn't happen.
I'm not saying the Wheel of Time TV show is bad, but I am saying it's not a very good adaptation.
Yeah, it's not a faithful adaptation, and it's not even trying to be.
No, it's not trying to show you what's occurring in the books on screen by any measure of the word.
That is an objectively correct assessment.
And if you know, and that's where I kind of come down on is if that's what you want, you're going to be disappointed.
It's a very easy pitch if you can just frame it like that. Like if you want to see page to screen perfection, you will be very upset. Mm-hmm. Like that's just like you're not going to get that. Like there's no sugarcoating it. That's not what's happening.
And I think that's what I figured out when I've talked to like my coworkers who love the books and other people who were like, I got halfway through the first episode and I'm done. And I'm like, you didn't even give it a chance. No, they did. And the first episode very clearly showed that this was not going to be a faithful adaptation of the books. And that's what they wanted. And anything that wasn't going to be that was never going to make them happy.
Right, yeah. So it's like there's just a very early sorting of binary sort. I'm not much for binaries, but there is a binary here of like, can you accept this being a radically different take, or does it need to be page accurate? Because you have to be able to, like the flow chart is very different depending on how you answer that question. It just is. It just is.
And I feel like I can hold both, right? I can be both disappointed because I did want to see that, right? And so the show is not what I wanted. And then I can go back and watch the show and be like, this is a fine show on its own. It's a pretty good, fantasy show. I like a lot of the visuals, and I can translate that into this book that I've read. But it's never going to be the show that I wanted.
Yeah. And it's really hard for me to know if I would like it enough without knowing the books. Like, it's like the curse of knowledge is way too real with that. Same. It's impossible for me to know if this would do it for me if I wasn't looking for the pieces of the books that are in it and I didn't know the books so well. I might not. I'm not a massively into TV person. So I just like, would this actually have caught my eye and drawn me in without my massive lifelong commitment to the books? I don't know. And like, I wish that was not my feeling, right? I wish that I could enthusiastically say, well, of course I would be super, super into it. But I'm like, I don't know.
And I can guarantee you I would have watched it if I hadn't read the books. Because all the Bone and whatever TV series that came out, all the fantasy stuff that came out on TV that I hadn't actually read, I still watched that. And a lot of that I actually enjoyed quite a bit, having not read the books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got halfway into an episode of Shadow and Bone and just was
Shadow and Bone, that's the one. Yeah.
I was so completely disinterested. I couldn't even finish the first episode. I don't know why, but it didn't grab me with like a repellent level of intensity. Like, I don't know what bothered me about it, but I was just like, I'm not interested. I don't care. None of this makes sense. And like, I don't know the books. I didn't know anything about it. And it just like, I couldn't even give it a whole episode before I was like, I'm going to go watch something else or do something else.
That one in Lock and Key I really enjoyed, but I know the comic book readers were really frustrated with that. Yeah, just stuff like that. I feel like the curse of knowledge is real. It's almost harder to enjoy a show based on a book series you love because you know what it should be on screen. Yeah,
and I've watched the Lord of the Rings movies so many more times than I've read the books. I read the books once.
Yep.
And I've watched the movies at a similar point in my life, right? I was about the right age to read the books and watch the movies when they were coming out. And so they both pair in my mind at roughly the same point in my life. And yeah, I've watched the movies many, many more times. They are the canon to me, even though I know technically the books are different. And I did technically read the books and I can remember a few things that are different. So, but also Lord of the Rings is an exception. So
I also have had trouble reading Lord of the Rings. I know I've read it once. I have zero desire.
The Hobbit is fantastic. The Hobbit is just so good.
But I don't know why. I don't know why I cannot immerse myself in the world that is Lord of the Rings. And I've tried audiobook as well. I wish I could find Lord of the Rings read by someone who doesn't have a British accent. If someone has that version out there, please send it to me. I feel like it would be so much easier for me to get through an audiobook of Lord of the Rings if it was just read with an American accent. And I don't care if that's ism or ist. Like,
it's against the British. It's
exactly. I'm American. I'm allowed to be against the British, right?
It's your patriotic duty to be anti-British.
It is 4th of July coming up, after all.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. There you go.
But we should read out the Patreons.
Yes. All of that to say, in a very meandering way, that all of you who have been here for a long time or a short time are fantastic. But we're going to read a bunch of names that have been here for a very long time. And thank you so much to each and every one of you.
And I have to start with the top with Anil Williams.
Speaking of the British.
Speaking of the British. Some of you know him as Ogre Tendencies. He's been there since the beginning. He met his wife through the podcast.
Yeah.
He is a good friend and has been there for a long, long time. So thank you, Neil.
Yeah, thanks, Neil. You're fantastic. Next, we have Zach, a.k.a. Smoaki, because that is how it's spelled. Smoaki.
Smoaki.
It's smoky, but with an extra A, so Smoaki.
Yeah. Also, been around since the beginning. Just really appreciate it. One of those names that I've seen in the chat forever.
Forever and ever and ever.
Forever. Keith William Randall.
I know there's been some Keiths around. I don't know if this is that Keith, but you're fantastic, Keith William Randall. And next we have a Ken Peterka.
I've always said
not sure
Paterka.
who that is. No, I'm just being annoying. This is OB Thunder, Ken Paterka. That's how I've always said it. Infamous troller of Lumen. I think that's probably the main central thing that one needs to know about Ken.
Then Nick Hood.
Nick Hood, thank you very much. Don't recognize your name, but you're awesome.
No, but is it's kind of amazing that like some people can give without necessarily, or maybe he does have a screen name that I just don't recognize and don't link up with the name. That is one of the biggest problems. Is I'll meet someone in person, I'll see their screen name, and I'll see their donor name, and not realize that all three are the same person.
Yeah, it's entirely possible that some of these people just have never connected their Patreon name to their Discord name, or they don't have a Discord name because they just want to give us money and not interact.
Also, thank you for that.
If you never interact with us, but you give us money, that is still a form of interaction, and we love you. Next up, we have Fate Firix, who, Fate, man.
Yeah, dude, Fate.
You've been around for a minute.
I mean, just roll with it.
That's like original 13 days.
Yeah, that's
like,
original Forsaken days. Yeah, absolutely. Such a great friend. It was just talking to him the other day. He's always asking me how I'm doing. Like, just always been a good friend, always been there for us. Really appreciate you.
Yeah, good guy.
Then we have Jeff Kidder. Again, a name I recognize from the Patreon from been around forever, but
Jeff Kidder I do recall interacting with on Discord, not in a couple of years.
Yeah.
But I do remember him being around for a while, and we had a couple of pretty cool conversations for a couple of years in Discord. So yeah, Jeff, I miss you. I miss hanging out with you in Discord. You're definitely a cool dude. Thank you.
Jonathan Morgantini.
Yeah, another way back in the original 13 days.
Another just roll with it member. Yeah, again, somebody I miss. Haven't seen you in a bit.
Yeah, took on the moniker of Agonor.
Agonor, yes.
We're all taking on things. I was Masana and he was Agonor.
Yeah, and frequently in if you go back and listen to old recordings, he would be referred to as Agonor.
Next, we've got a name that I don't recognize, but thank you very much anyway. John Hunt. Appreciate you.
Oh, I remember John. Yeah, John
yeah?
Hunt. Yeah, we definitely had a couple of email exchanges with John Hunt. Had some conversations with John. So yeah, again, old school name, been around forever. That's why these people get up to these big numbers, because they've just been supporting us for how many years have we been around now? Is it 6 plus 7? 6, I think.
Yeah, 6 because 2017 was when I found you, and it's now 2024. So yeah. 6 coming up on 7.
And then Eric Neargold.
Nearguard.
Guard.
There's no L.
You know what? My screen's a little fuzzy. That's not my eyes. I'm not getting old.
Definitely not you getting old.
Definitely my screen. Definitely.
But thank you very much, Eric Nearguard.
Eric Nearguard. Yeah.
And that is the last of the people who have somehow, for some reason, crested $1,000 in their support of this insanity.
It is crazy when I think about it like that. It's amazing. And and certainly other people have supported in other ways, direct donations, and not every donation is captured in Patreon for sure.
Oh, for sure. Sure. Lots of energy and money through other avenues, and for sure. But this is just in that steady trickle, like many drops fills a cup sort of way. Like, wow. And then moving on to our slightly lesser but nonetheless spectacular tier of people who have crested $500.
We've got Jed Dews.
Jed Dews. I feel like I recognize that picture, maybe? I don't know. I feel like that name should be ringing a bell. Jed,
again, an early supporter, been around for a long time. Had some early interactions with him, but again, not for a while. But
okay. Next, we've got Evan McMeadby. I am screwing that up so bad. I can tell that is not a name in my capacity to say properly.
There's some H's in there that I'm not sure how to go with.
Yeah, it probably are pronounced with a V or something, Medibi. I am very sorry, Evan, but thank you very much for your support and for your patience with that just absurd amount of yankification of your name.
The email makes it seem like Maclame. But maybe cut that out.
Names are hard.
Yeah. Names are hard. And then Devin Moore, man. Good.
Devin.
Yeah, man.
You've been around forever also. And you're still around. You still show up in recordings sometimes. And it's great to see you.
Yeah. No, and great to see you in like the chat as well, frequently. It has a kid now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I believe was, I should probably not name the child, but I believe was given a very cool name. We'll just leave it at that. Almost as cool as my name.
You're like, I want to be very, very careful.
Yeah, I'm just gonna not dox someone else's child. Okay. After Devin, we've got Kaminara, who's a name I also recognize from some distinct SpoilerCons interactions, I believe. And yeah, very nice person. Amazed to see that you've been supporting us that long. Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Kenneth Brooks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kenneth. Again, just another name that I know I've seen around forever. Really appreciate you, Kenneth. I always think of the country music singer. Sorry.
I'm sure he's never heard that before.
Yeah. I mean, it's Gareth, not Kenneth, but
sure.
still, yeah. Still.
Next is another name I don't recognize, Matt Anzavino. I love running through this gauntlet.
Just so you know, Matt Anzavino was my college roommate. Who I reached out to and told about the podcast. And I, thank you, buddy, for supporting this for, ever since. But he was a Wheel of Time fan. We just talk about Wheel of Time all the time. If anything, I used to have all of the conversations with Matt Anzavino that I'm having on the podcast, I had with him first, right?
Wow.
So he's a bigger part of this podcast than you might realize, because he was there for a lot of my ideas being formed in the beginning when I was still like the proto co-host. Yeah. I mean, I had a couple of friends I used to talk Wheel of Time with. I had one guy named Collins I used to lifeguard with, who had also read the books, and we used to hang out and chat. But Matt was definitely the guy in college. This is when the slog, he got me through the slog, because the only book that came out while we were in college was, of course, book 10, Crossroads of Twilight. So when I went to college, I had just read Winter's Heart, and then when Knife of Dreams hadn't come out yet. And so we're spending all 4 of these years, and the only thing we get is Crossroads of Twilight. And like, oh, the despair. But yeah, Matt was my slog partner in real life.
Gotcha. Well, that's a double salute to you,
yeah,
Matt, for being a supporter of us and a supporter of Seth back in the slog days.
Yeah, absolutely. And dude, thank you so much. I never expected you to support me like this. I really appreciate it.
Next, there's a name I do recognize, Annalise Amaro.
Yes.
She's been around for a long time. I remember her from SpoilerCons.
All the SpoilerCons, yeah. I remember you used to have a great time there. I miss seeing her at those cons. She was a nurse, if I remember correctly, right?
Yeah. Worked in healthcare. Before I stopped using Instagram, I was getting a lot of healthcare pictures, and really fun travel pictures too, because people who work intense jobs seem to understand the concept of going on cool vacations in a way that I do not. I have a very chill job, so I take very chill vacations. I do not take intense vacations.
Yeah. Also, I like being a homebody.
Yeah, that too. But yes, thank you so much, Annalise, for being a part of this community and also of healthcare, because not enough people do that. So thank you.
Robert McMelkin.
Don't recognize that name, but thank you very much for being a stalwart supporter.
Just really appreciate it. Nathaniel Friday.
No,
geez, why does my brain do that?
I don't know. That's dyslexia, but with just truncating things, just entirely.
Nathaniel Friday.
That's a very cool last name. I'm sure you've never heard that before. I'm sure you've never heard "Thank God It's Friday" jokes at all. So I will not make any of those.
Yeah, too late. Too late. I think that's why I skipped over the first part of the name. I was busy focusing on the Friday part, and my brain's like, oh yeah, whatever that first name is, Friday.
Sure. But thank you very much.
Thank
all
you.
days of the week.
God, stop it! He's gonna not support us anymore.
No, I'm trying to learn from Tarvon After Dark. You have to heckle your audience.
We don't have that kind of relationship. You can't just pick it up. Then people are going to be like, wait, why are you insulting me all of a sudden? You've been nice to me this whole time.
Every time I think about changing how I edit, I worry that I'm going to weird people out because I've set certain standards and they'll be bothered if I change. And last, but very much not least, one of our very favorite Australians, Melissa Taylor. Very favorite fans from the land of Mad Men from way back. You're the person who taught me that squirrels are apparently the most amazing thing to an Australian. I did not realize that squirrels had such magical powers over Australians.
Squirrels are cool.
Well, squirrels are amazing. I love squirrels. I just, seeing Melissa melt down over the sight of how many squirrels there were in Portland was just fantastic.
Did you go through a phase in, it was like high school or college, where everyone around you wanted to have a squirrel army, or was that just me?
I don't recall that phase, no.
I just remember it was like multiple independent people I'd meet would be like, I want to train squirrels to rest upon my shoulders and train up a squirrel army to defend myself, like in case of zombie apocalypse or something like that.
I mean, that's very cool.
Right?
I will be getting on that bandwagon now, 30 years late.
but like, maybe I felt like that was something that other people came up with. Maybe it was me. Maybe I'm the problem.
No, it's an excellent idea. I love it so much. Where I moved to, for some reason, is very devoid of squirrels, and it is a problem that I'm trying to figure out how to fix, because there are squirrels all up and down this valley. They're all over the place. It's not like I'd be introducing squirrels to the area. Just for some reason, my particular stretch of valley, I guess, has too many cats. Like, I don't know what's wrong, but like, there's no squirrels around here, and it's unacceptable. All right. With that, thank you so much to our long-lasting Patreons, and also to all of our other Patreons and everyone who has supported us in any way, shape, or form. You are all fantastic and help keep us going. You're just great. Thank you so much.
And we want to get into what is a long but super awesome chapter. It's a 2 POV. We got a Rand and then a Matt POV in a plain wooden box.
Oh, yeah. It's such an unassuming, plain wooden box of a title. But man, oh man, do things pop off in this chapter.
Hey, if there's anything we know about boxes, is things they tend to explode, especially when you put dragons in them.
And there's not even a lid on this box, and yet its explosive power is profound. And also, this is the moment that gets used for the ebook cover.
That's right.
This is the ebook cover for this, is the moment when Rand blocks the fireball and right before he loses his hand.
So what's the box referring to?
The plain wooden box that one of the Saldaeans finds in the house that is filled with male Adom.
Oh, okay.
That. It's a very unassuming, just little wooden trough, like you might put woodworker's tools in or something, and yet it holds the power to capture all of the men and women with Adom of the kind appropriate to their gender in his party, should Semirog's plan have worked the way she planned for it to.
Part of me was trying to make it a casket. Like, a plain wooden box, right?
Yeah, I like that. I hate that, but I like that.
Sure, let me read us in, and let's get started on this chapter.
And it is a dragon in a box for the icon. That is literally what the chapter icon is. Yeah.
Although, in fairness, it is exploding out of the box, both sides of it, right? It's not totally contained.
Oh yeah, this dragon will not be contained in a box. He does not fit. He does not sit.
The midday Altaran sun was warm, though a gusting breeze sometimes whipped Rand's cloak. They had been on the hilltop for 2 hours now, a great mass of dark clouds creeping down from the north above a blue-gray haze spoke of rain to come, and a cooling. Andor lay only a few miles in that direction, across low forested hills of oak and pine, leatherleaf and sourgum. That border had seen countless generations of cattle raids going in both directions. Was Elaine watching it rain in Camelin? That lay a good 150 leagues east, too far for her to be more than a faint presence in the back of his head, Avienda in Eridaman was fainter still. He had not considered that the wise ones would take her along. Still, she would be safe among tens of thousands of Aiel, as safe as a lane behind Caemlyn's walls. Tidashar stamped a hoof and tossed his head, eager to be moving. Rand patted the big black's neck. The stallion could reach the border in under an hour, but their way was west today. A short way west in just a short while now. He had to impress at today's meeting, and he had chosen his garb with care. The crown of swords sat on his head for more reason than making an impression, though. Half the small swords nestled among the wide band of laurel leaves pointed down, making it uncomfortable to wear, giving constant reminders of its weight in gold and in responsibility. A small chip in one of those laurel leaves dug at his temple to remind him of the battle against the Seanchan, where it had been made. A battle lost when he could not afford to lose. His dark green silk coat was embroidered in gold on the sleeve, shoulders, and high collar. A gold inlaid buckle in the shape of a dragon fastened his sword belt. And he had the dragon scepter in hand, a 2-foot length of spearhead with a long green and white tassel below the polished steel point. If the Daughter of the Nine Moons recognized it for part of a Seanchan spear, she must also see the dragons that maidens had carved winding around the remaining haft. The golden maned dragon heads on the back of his hands glittered metallically in the sun. However high she stood among the Seanchan, she would know whom she faced. A fool, Lewis Theron's wild laughter echoed inside his head. A fool to walk into a trap. Rand ignored the madman. It might be a trap, but he was ready to spring it if it was. It was worth the risk. He needed this truce. He could crush the Seanchan, but at what cost in blood and in time he might not have. He glanced north again. The sky above Andor was clear, except for a few high white clouds, drifting wisps. The last battle was coming. He had to take the risk.
I mean, it's just such peak Rand.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say this is peak Rand, right? This is the point where, like, he has achieved everything he was kind of supposed to achieve except defeating the Seanchan and making peace with them. Right? He's the king of all the lands. He's the dragon reborn. He has the scepter. He has the crown.
He's an emperor at this point. He's transcended to emperor.
Yeah.
Because he's now treating on behalf of the continent against an empire. He's talking to an empress. So he is an emperor.
That's a good point. Right.
But yeah, he's just the most resplendent and grand and powerful that he will ever be. He goes on a very rapid decline from here and then hits his Buddha phase where he doesn't have attachment anymore. This is him having the maximum attachment, right? He has the most things and is the most trying to micromanage the world and has the most hands he'll ever have, like peak Rand. Everything really starts to spiral out of control and then pull out at the last minute from a total wipeout from this point onward, from this chapter onward.
But yeah, I mean, the blinding of him is a really significant event.
Yeah. Being blinded has a lot to do with like prophecy stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And losing the hand as well, right? We can talk about like, how do we know he's going to lose his hand? Well, all the fucking prophecies.
So much prophecy. And yeah, exactly. He loses his hand like, no, it's not Balder. It's like Tyr. He loses his hand like Tyr loses his hand to Fenris in Norse mythology.
I mean, and like how much is losing the hand a trope, right? Everyone from Finn in Adventure Time to Luke in Star Wars to half the people in Game of Thrones. I mean, Jaime Lannister is one of them. Yeah, it's just like getting your hand cut off as the hero is this sort of noble sacrifice that sort of turns you from this person of war and violence, right? Because the hand is always what you're attacking with. Cutting that hand off is a symbolic loss of attack and often results in a reset back to someone who's more thoughtful, more diplomatic, less violent, less aggressive. Someone who's now settling down to rule instead of out to conquer.
I'd never seen it framed that way. I mean, Rand goes, I guess I'll have to learn how to kill people differently then. So I don't know that I've ever seen hand loss as a pathway to peaceful, thoughtful rule as a trope.
It's not so much peaceful, thoughtful. I don't know. Maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, but just this idea that generally there is this step back and like re-examination, right? Like Luke loses his hand and he comes back as a Jedi, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right. And so he's now achieved that balance of thought. Like, but they still use violence. They still have a left hand. Often they replace the right hand with something, right? Like,
well, Rand actually loses his left hand here. He still has his right hand, as I recall, because he's holding it with, like, it's a whole thing where he's like, yeah, I can still do sword performance, kinda, but not really. Like, yeah.
Yeah, and it's a thought I'm forming. It's not fully formed. I'm just sort of thinking about how often these characters lose their hands, and how it is a very transformative moment for them.
I mean, your hands are really how you enact things in the world. So, like, both literally and allegorically, it has to mark a change in how you interact with the world. And if you are the Emperor of the Westlands and in charge of saving the world from the Dark One, yeah, that's some pretty big symbolic shifting of energy to have to reorganize around losing a hand, regardless of which hand it is. To say nothing of, just the fact that, like, disability in general really changes people's lives and is a big part of the human experience, and also is like a big part of being a war veteran, right? Like losing a limb or having some other traumatic experience is like a very common thing that like you have to live with for the rest of your life, is like not having a hand or a foot because of a grenade or whatever, or a landmine. This is again a piece of his war trauma, right? Like, I mean, the way that Rand like doesn't realize that his hand has been blown off, we'll get there when we get there, but like I was seeing a lot of just like, you have to keep going even though you've lost a part of yourself. What an intense piece of like the warrior mentality that Jordan is getting to explore there too.
Well, and I think that part of what he's showing here is that Rand hasn't really dealt with the loss of the hand yet.
No.
He
hasn't even gotten to the loss of the hand yet. We haven't gotten to that part.
Right.
Chapter,
Let's keep going. Yeah. So it's a trap. Everybody knows it's a trap, right? We know it's a trap. It's Semirog setting a trap.
Everyone knows. It says it on the page 3 times. 3 different characters who are not in the same party all say it's a trap. It's the trappiest trap that ever trapped. And you know what Rand does? He says, I'm from the Two Rivers. Our specialty is walking into traps.
Yeah, how else do you trigger a trap? You know it's a trap and you walk into it. Like, bang, bang, boom. That's how I do. That's how we do in Two Rivers. Like, we've seen the girls do it enough time. It's actually kind of justifying to watch Rand do it. And be like, yep, this is just what they do.
It's a cultural trait in the Two Rivers to just walk into traps. Like, it's part of their specific mountain culture heritage.
You can't trap me. I'm too big to trap. Okay.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And, I gotta say, Lewis Theron is sounding completely sane here.
The part where he says that a woman's love is violent?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe, like, the real women in the audience can stand up and tell me, like, is that part of the thing? Because I mean, okay, I take it back. I do like to bite as a form of love. I am a biter.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about.
I am the kind of spouse who will walk up to you while you're in the kitchen making dinner and just randomly bite you. Mm-hmm. This is the kind of partner that I am. So I guess Lewis Theron is completely on the money here. I take it all back.
Sometimes they hurt a man worse than they think they have. I'm telling you, the chompers are hard. Like,
I have learned that there is such a thing as too hard to bite someone.
I believe zombie movies. I believe people can break skin if they were really chewing on your arm like it was something to eat. I think psychologically we have a hard time doing that, but jaws are more than strong enough.
Oh, yeah. I remember reading that in like some random book of facts in a bathroom somewhere. Like, the human jaw is absolutely capable of biting through your finger. Your brain would never let you, because that's just not how the body works. But like, you have the bite strength for sure. You could bite someone else's finger off. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes they're even sorry afterwards. It's a funny statement about women. I wonder, like, is it a Jordan statement? Is it like him being, oh, this is Lewis Theron is totally crazy? Like, what is he commenting on Min? Is Min smacking him around a little bit? Like, I don't know. I had a lot of confusion about this statement and why it's here and what it's trying to say.
I mean, I always assumed that it meant that Ileana was actually not such an angel, maybe. She gets portrayed as like just this delicate blonde woman that just got tragically murdered. And I'm wondering if she was, kind of spicy and like maybe through things. And, there was more similarity between her and Lanfear than either would care to admit,
I was going to say, maybe it's like referring to Lanfear.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's also a reasonable choice.
But I do think it is this idea that like men and women inherently have miscommunications, right? That's part of what this book is based around, and that can be painful.
Yeah.
In ways that like aren't intended.
I mean, Perrin and Fael really do exemplify that the most of anyone, that miscommunication hurts people in a loving relationship. Yeah, there's no reason that couldn't be actually a very salient commentary on just, it's difficult to people. Being in relationships with people is hard because miscommunications will inevitably get in the way. Even if you work through them, they still come up and it sucks.
And the best people are sorry afterwards because they understand that like the miscommunication hurt you.
Right. If you're in a really ideal situation, you'll manage to get to the apology phase in the life cycle of these inevitable miscommunications.
And I mean, it's not that like miscommunication is the theme of these books or anything.
Yeah. Miscommunication, beefing up the page count in my Wheel of Time?
No, not at all. So he's getting, basically a bunch of advice from people as they're walking into this meeting with the Shan-Chan. Olivia's, basically saying you can't trust them because she's former Shan-Chan.
She also blew the secret that the Daughter of the Nine Moons is the heir to the throne. This is information that is not being acknowledged in Abu Dar. Bashir is shocked to learn that she's the heir to the throne. But the reason it wasn't mentioned is because she's under the veil. Olivia doesn't know she's under the veil. Olivia got captured before Tuon showed up and started Tuoning all over the place. So all she heard is Daughter of the Nine Moons, and she just left right to heir to the Empress because under the veil isn't on her radar.
I also think she's not really loyal to her anymore, so she's willing to spill the beans, right? Because I think basically all the Wetlanders don't even know who the Daughter of the Nine Moons is. And everybody who's loyal to them understands what under the veil means and isn't going to talk about it.
Yeah, see, I figured that Olivia didn't know she was spilling the beans. I didn't think she had enough political sophistication to deliberately spill those beans. I thought she just was ignorant. But that totally could be.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have a good take on Olivia for sure.
Yeah, I don't know. But anyway, he walks up to the encounter with 25 plus channelers, all kitted out, paired up, relationship dynamicing their asses off. Like he has like the full Avengers like lineup, just like walking across the field in an arrowhead, like headed towards this encounter.
And there's like a whole paragraph just listing off these paired Aes Sedai Ashramans. And I don't know. I don't think we necessarily need to go through them all because there's a lot of backstory you could read on what exactly these characters do, what scenes they're in, and how they appear. But it's just it's a bunch of warders and Ashraman warders and Aes Sedai who bonded them.
Yep. If the names don't stand out to us now, they're not going to do anything super interesting. They haven't been around, like we're getting into that phase where RJ is just like, and suddenly the cast is expanding exponentially because I want to scale up for the last battle. I
mean, you've got Logain and his, we've talked about them. We talked about all these characters many, many times, right? It's not like we're not familiar with them. Beldine.
There's a couple of new ones, right? Like, but whatever.
Narishma, he who follows after, like we've talked about him quite a bit, But again, nothing really. Just know that he has backup, right?
Yeah, Janare and Kajima, I don't know if they do anything interesting, like they're new names, but they're whatever.
Right.
Yeah, exactly, Pants. 3 or 4 weeks ago, we determined that new names just don't matter at this point. So, it's the people we've been talking about with a couple of other ones for filler that don't necessarily do anything. But there's a lot of them. That's the point, is we have a very powerful get the band back together along with all their side projects and side hustles at the same time into a whole ass festival of channelers.
And we're seeing the Red Oddjaw be more sort of the Oddjaw that deals with men who can channel, which in this case means getting along with them.
Right, which is a revelation innovation that's going to happen elsewhere on a more deliberate scale. But yeah, this one, Janare and Kojima, I mean, okay, we want to talk about them. I just mentioned that they don't do anything. Here's the one thing they do. They prompt Rand to think, well, maybe Mazrim Taim somehow accidentally did a good thing by getting Aes Sedai and Ashaman paired up, because you've got a Red joking with a Ashaman, and maybe that's somehow accidentally a good thing. And it's like, on the one hand, Rand, I see where you're going, and yes, that is kind of what some other people are ultimately going to make manifest, but also, like, the degree to which this is not Taim's doing and is just a happy accident. Taim was trying so hard to put a stick in your spokes. Like, this is not, this is not even a happy accident. This is, like, running counter to what Taim was trying to do when he ordered this. But hey, we've got a Red who doesn't hate men, so that's cool.
He really wanted to create a sort of slave-master relationship, and then a lot of these people are just taking it more as equals bonding.
Yeah, maybe there's a bit of a power differential, but nothing like what Taim was trying to instill.
So here's the line. No one know the effect of an Ashaman's death on the woman he had bonded. Did we ever get an answer to that? Like, what the bond does? Is it the same thing as a warder bond, or is this a totally different effect? I can't think of any moment where an Ashaman dies and we see the after effects on one of the Aes Sedai he'd bonded.
She's channeling Saidin? Oh, no, because that's the warder bond.
Mm-hmm.
This is the... Right. We're asking about what happens when it's the slightly different... If we do, it's in the Sanderlanche books, and I don't recall specifically. I want to say we have to see it at some point. It'd be weird if we never saw it.
They usually die in pairs, right? Like, it's usually...
Yeah, I guess that's the thing. Yeah.
And or the big group dies when there's, a mass attack, right?
Yeah, they're really fighting and moving in pairs throughout the battle, so they don't tend to go down separately. Yeah, we should remember to keep an eye out for that as we go through, but yeah, I wouldn't expect to see it given that aspect of it.
But yeah, if anyone has an answer to that, let us know. Any idea what Maurice is instructing Narishma about?
Nope. No idea. I'm assuming some sort of weird power games, because that's how all the Aes Sedai are towards their Ashaman.
Codswain and Nynaeve are in their ter'angreal jewelry. That becomes very important later.
Basically the deciding factor on how this encounter goes.
Right. Those things make them both pretty much indestructible machines, right? Like,
yeah, they're level 20
at
this point. There's a mention of an Ashaman here who, much like our Patreons that we mentioned at the top of the episode, has been at the Black Tower since before there was a Black Tower. And he's finally achieved having his dragon pin. And, it's a whole thing of like, yeah, he earned it. He's awesome. And most of the men he started with are dead. Which, again, I was thinking about, like, war and how it chews at people, and the few people that survive long enough to get out have to think about all the people who didn't, and that whole thing.
Well, between the training accidents and people going mad and stuff like that, yeah, a lot of those early Ashaman are gone. But, some of them are still around, right? Like, there's a group of them that are still important, right?
There's just a few, and they're kind of scattered about.
Dahmer, Flynn. I feel like the ones with Perrin.
Yeah, the two with Perrin have been around since the beginning. Narishma, it's just a handful. There was like 20 or so at the beginning, and now there's like 4 or 5. Like,
right.
That's a lot of people to have lost.
He promised Min that she could come in bed. He keeps mentioning this moment of weakness, and I'm like, mm-hmm.
She could come in bed? What?
Phrasing. So Rand promised Min that she could accompany him on this meeting. But at what point, but he keeps saying he made that promise at a moment of weakness. And we, of course, And then he later refers to man should never give promises in bed. So I think we know what the moment of weakness was.
Post-colloidal glow, baby.
And he promised Min that she could come, right? Sorry. Jesus. He promised Min she could accompany him.
Yeah, somehow she finagled some kind of promise, some kind of favor, and she used it to ensure that she wouldn't be left behind for this particular adventure.
And he keeps telling her to stay behind him, which is kind of why he loses his hand.
Yeah, it's specifically why he loses his hand, because he can't dodge out of the way because she's behind him. He's like, I'll protect you, I guess, with my literal body.
You know, and it's like Rand. So there's a moment where Rand tries to channel and it doesn't work. And I want to talk about that when we get there, because I've got a few questions. But yeah, the next thing...
We've got some mention of how it's weird that the local countryside doesn't seem to have noticed a large Shan-Chan presence having arrived. And Rand's like, that's weird because they don't have traveling. But we know, this is Semirog, so they do have traveling. And also, she killed everyone in the manor house. The Saldaeans go into the house after the encounter, and they come back out saying, looks like everyone who used to live here is dead.
Yeah, there's no bodies, but there's blood everywhere. And, you know, you don't get that much blood without killing a few people.
Right. Because they're like going through this like nice peaceful area. There's a manor house like that is occupied and everything's chill. So it looks, you know, it's too quiet, and that's what looks like a trap. And yet you go inside the house and it's like just blood everywhere. Like, oh, Semirog, why are you so nasty?
So walking into this trap, everybody's holding the power except Rand. Rand has not seized it, because this is no time to give the madman a chance to get a hold of the power. And he, instead of referring to the voice in his head as LTT, he keeps referring to the madman in this case. And I'm like, wait a minute, Rand, are you the madman?
He did say you could feel Lews Therin in his head. He didn't want to give the madman a chance. Like,
sure.
There is a period there. They are separate sentences.
They are separate sentences.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. It's weird. And yeah, I mean, the part where he's walking into what is surely a trap and feels more afraid of himself than the situation does not inspire confidence.
And he keeps referring to the things Lews Therin says as he sounds remarkably sane. But yet, he refers to the madman as getting power. I think at this point, Rand realizes he's the madman.
Yeah, you're making a strong argument chapter after chapter for this whole take. It really does hold up.
Lews Therin's the sane one in this situation.
Yeah.
Or at least that's like, because Rand has just embraced the madness, right? He's used to say, I'm not the mad one, Lews Therin is. Now it's like, gosh, I have to do these crazy things. Now Lews Therin's the voice of reason in his head.
Yeah.
The girls are masked and inverted, right? So that they...
It's Catswain, notable girl.
Sorry, the females.
God. You just say the Aes Sedai.
The women.
Yeah.
The Aes Sedai.
They're
Yeah, not just the Aes Sedai, but also, right, the former Soldam.
Right. Everyone who should have given him goosebumps has not given him goosebumps, and he is upset about that. He's mad that he's lost the goosebump tell because they've got the masking thing.
And he's trying to figure out if they can get an equivalent weave to detect the women that the women have to detect the men channeling.
Right, which just feels like a lot of extra rigmarole to worry about, but whatever. And Nynaeve also points out when the procession exits the building and they start walking towards Rand, Nynaeve says, I don't, like, someone's channeling because I have the turn girl to tell me that, but I don't see anything. And she's masked her ability and inverted the weave. And I wonder how the Shan-Chan learned that.
Right. And again, it's the Forsaken.
Because it's the Forsaken knowledge. But it's like, on the one hand, I'm like, oh, it's a lot of rigmarole to figure that out. On the other hand, we're seeing here that it's like pretty important intelligence to be able to know if someone's channeling or not. And being able to hide that is actually a very uncommon piece of knowledge. And it does matter who does or doesn't have it.
And the fact that they have those Sarangrial basically tell them that, like, you know, Cimarroc's going into this thinking there's no way they'll be able to tell I'm pretending to be somebody else. I've inverted the weave. I'm not actively channeling. I've hid my ability to channel. If anyone didn't have specialized Terangrial specifically to avoid that, they would not be able to tell that Tuon wasn't Tuon.
Yep. And what are the odds? What are the odds?
Mm-hmm.
That's what she's thinking.
And even if they had them, what are the odds that they'd know how to use them? They're primitive savages.
Right. They don't know what they've got. They don't know what they have.
But thank goodness to that toothless wilder in the Black Swamp or Forest
Black
or whatever.
Hills.
Black Hills, that's what it was. Who taught Codswain.
Yeah.
And I forget when we figured out her birth could be, but it was pretty early.
I mean, she's like 400 years old. It's a while ago.
Yeah.
Oh, the woman who gave her the stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, she was old. She was clearly a channeler. She could have been as much as 400 or something, 400 or 500 years old. It was a long time ago.
600 even.
Yeah, I think we worked out that she could have been alive at the very end of the breakdown of Arthur Hawkwing's empire.
Right. Because if Codswain's 400-ish, maybe a little bit less, 600-ish.
And the other woman was 600-ish, then it gives you almost 1,000 years, which is roughly Arthur Hawkwing time.
Right.
I love how she tosses back her cloak like she's unsheathing a sword. She's like, I can fix whatever tomfoolery they've got going on up there. Once I'm a little closer, my magic hair ornaments will fix it. And she's just, she's fully kitted out. It's really fun.
It is. It's very much like Endgame when you've got all the special magic items that you can get through the game and you go up to the final boss. And it's like, Semirog, the Forsaken that you feared all the time. And it's like, boop, gotcha. I have all the magic equipment. There's nothing you can do about it.
Turns out going on side quests is a really good idea.
Really good idea. They got not one, but 2 sets of Terangrial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So out comes, they get to the farm, Lady Deirdre's house outside of King's Crossing, which smells of a trap, because of course it is a trap. And out come 3 pairs of women on either side of the door. So that's 6 pairs of women, total of 12, 6 Suldam, 6 Damane. And then Tuon, in quotes, comes walking out.
Yeah. Tiny, delicate, flanked by all of this magic power. Clearly, she's not the threat, right?
Clearly. And then again, stay behind me, he tells Min. So Min gets right behind him. And abruptly, no more than 10 paces away, she flickered. For an instant, she was taller than most men, garbed in all black, surprise on her face, and though she still wore the veil, her head was covered with a short-cut, wavy black hair. Only an instant before the small woman returned, her step faltering as she let her white skirts fall. But another flicker and the tall, dark woman stood there, her face twisted in fury behind the veil. He recognized that face, though. He had never seen it before. Lewis Theron had, and that was enough. Semirog, he said in shock before he could stop the word, and suddenly everything seemed to happen at once. So, yeah. The disruption, and of course, Rand instantly sees her face and recognizes Semirog, because of course the information he's getting from Lewis Theron is true.
Yeah.
As we'll see in a bit. So he goes to reach for the source to attack her, and, this Lewis Theron and him jostle around for it, and neither one of them gets it, so he can't see the source in time. And she throws a fireball at him. Now, I'm not really sure why nobody else reacts quicker. Those people who already have seized the source, why they take so long to take her down when she says Semirog. It seems like they should be able to react as quickly as she does, but...
Because what she does is she shouts, shield them. We hear this from Nynaeve afterwards, that Semirog shouted for the Suldam to shield the rest of them. But
she might have been shouting something, gotcha.
But then the shields all bounced off because everyone was already full of the power. So all of the accompanying people were all busy fighting each other. And that's why the central characters were able to have their moment.
So a grenade goes off in his hand, is how I think about it.
Yeah, she throws a grenade up and he catches it right as it explodes. Like, he reaches up to catch it and keep it from hitting Min, but, then it blows up in his hand. Technically, actually, he hits it like a baseball bat with the dragon scepter. But again, it explodes at the moment of contact. And so he loses most of the dragon scepter as well as his hand.
Oh, and it's a good point that she probably did. She was preparing to attack him with fireball anyway.
Probably.
So it was probably ready to go.
Yeah. Or she was going to throw a fireball at someone and it just happened to be him.
So he wakes up with the sword poking him in the side, which we've seen before. Actually, before he got the wound in his side, back in Eye of the World, I think he fell down and woke up with the sword hilt poking him in the side. And back then I was like, foreshadowing.
Yeah, it happened again when he knocked himself off the horse with the lightning in that one battle with the Shan Shan. He wears his sword everywhere and he keeps falling over. So, keeps poking him in his ribs.
Landing on it, right? Yeah.
But yeah, he doesn't even know he's been hurt yet. He like tries to push himself up and is suddenly like, well, my hands, right? Like he puts a mangled stump on the ground and suddenly he's aware that he's hurt. He is no longer able to ignore that information.
Right. For some reason, that's a lot of pain. A mangled, burned stump on the ground and trying to force yourself up. He struggled to rise and fell again. I think there's a lot going on in that he fell again. Mm-hmm. The amount of pain he must have been going through.
Yeah. Yeah, and his vision is all screwed up. Like, he's clearly got the ringing in his ears. He is disoriented. He's even, like, having to remember what's happening, right? Like, he's had enough of a concussive head moment that he, like, forgot what's happening. And it's like, oh, yeah, I attack, Semirog, Min, help.
And this really is the fulfillment of the prophecy of the blind, fish, handless Fisher King. Right, the man who wanders the kingdom. There's this.
The Fisher King loses a hand?
Maybe not, but he wanders blind. Right, the blind king who wanders, the beggar king, I suppose, is a better term.
Yeah, and he's prophesied to like stand on the blind one will stand on his own grave and weep. Right?
Yeah,
he can't have veins of gold until his eyes are fucked up.
Exactly. Yeah, there's prophecies about the eyes. There's prophecies about the hand. Like. It's very important that he becomes this transformative person who is humbled by losing his senses and his body. And his body's deteriorating, right? Like, this is one of the reasons he's leaving it. Like, everything's broken down.
Right. I mean, and when he does his vagrant wanderer phase, he has a walking stick for a good portion of that because he kind of needs it to, like, keep himself upright and going.
He's burning his body out, right? Like, he is absolutely doing his everything to win this battle. And he's literally burning himself through his body. And there's a moment where he dismisses the injury.
Yeah, he just compartmentalizes and decides it doesn't matter. And then Nynaeve heals the pain, so, But
on one level, so for me, it's like, part of my emotions when I've been injured, and I've been hurt, not badly, but badly enough that I was like, I felt like I was going to lose something, right? Like, I really don't have any sensation in my pointer finger anymore, right? Like, I cut my finger off, right? Pretty badly. And there's an emotional toll that goes with that, because then I have to live with that injury for the rest of my life. And for Rand, he's like, yeah, I have to live with this for the rest of my life, which is going to be like 2 weeks, Right. And it's like not, right. So it's like, yeah, it's just not that big of a deal to have an injury. It's like, yeah, I might have to learn how to refight or however long, but like, I'm basically dead anyway. It doesn't really matter. I'm not going to have to deal with this for that long. It's a minor inconvenience.
Yeah, there's a certain amount of like, will it slow me down between now and the last battle? No. All right. Then it doesn't matter. Like,
the only thing, I guess I'll have to learn some new sword forms. That's literally all he says, right? Like,
yeah. But he does have phantom pain. He does have the weird experience of feeling the hand and having it be, you can't itch it because the itch is completely in your mind and all of that. He is going to experience that, which again, I'm sure Robert Jordan knew a lot of people who had that experience.
Yes. Yeah, I want to do mirror therapy with Rand.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, totally.
Where you put a mirror down in the center and they have both hands out, and then you like have them essentially pretend to be clenching both hands at the same rate. And then that helps them. I forget what it is exactly, but it helps the brain sync up that you're moving both hands. And then it sometimes lets people with injuries actually move the phantom hand when they normally can't.
Oh,
because
wow.
Because their eye is seeing in the mirror is seeing the hand move. And if you're doing it with the same hand at both times, right, then yeah, your brain thinks that hand's moving, and you can actually like change the position of the phantom hand, which some people it's stuck. And that's what's causing pain.
Right, and it's stuck in a way that's... wow, that... God, the human brain is insane. I mean, it's sane, hopefully, but, like, the human brain is just... the way that it is plastic is just really impressive.
I've seen them do that, too, with... they'll put a rubber hand out and...
that's what I've heard of. Yeah.
And sort of the similar thing where they'll brush both the rubber hand and your hand, and then they'll just brush the rubber hand and you can feel it.
Yeah.
And then they'll do something like smack the rubber hand with a hammer. And you're like, oh my God, that hurt. And they're like, it wasn't your hand.
Yeah. Yeah, we can identify with a lot of different things. Just if you can, the way we mentally map where we are in space is very interesting. Sometimes when I meditate and like really try to do like a body awareness thing, I will realize that I am very much left dominant. Like I can feel how much more my brain has high fidelity mapping of the left side of my body than the right side. I feel much bigger on the left, like a map of countries that have been distorted by population or GDP or something. Like I can just feel how much I don't have the same level of intensity of wiring for the right side. I just like I haven't put the time in to develop that kind of motor control, and I can feel it. It's wild.
Whereas I feel like my head and my hands and my feet are giant and the rest of me is very small.
Interesting.
Because that's where my sensations are. That's where I'm very focused on the extremities of my hands and everything I feel with my hands and everything I feel with my feet. And then I'm very focused in my head, right? But everything else is sort of, I have a vaguely less, your nerves are less dense. Those are the places where your nerves are the most dense, is your hands, your feet, your lips, your face.
Sure.
They feel outsized to me because I feel them.
Yeah, and you're spending a lot more brain power on them proportionally compared to the area of your body map that it has to like take up. Like your hands are very small compared to your arms. That's just like how the anatomy works. But you don't need nearly as much brain power to run the arm between your hand and your brain.
The arm extends or not. Right?
Yeah.
Like, that's pretty much it. Sometimes it rotates, but like the hand has a lot of digits.
Yeah, so much articulation and sensation. And
especially when you're working with your hands or typing or any of that, like so much of what you're doing it's your brain and your hands are the only two things really active.
Yeah. So yeah, Rand is not giving any kind of grace or acknowledgement to that. He's just like, suck it up, Buttercup. I'll live out the rest of my month to live and it'll be fine.
As far as I can tell, no casualties on the good guys' side. Some injuries that Nynaeve heals right up.
Yeah, that was what I observed too, is that there's no fatalities on either side in this encounter. Everyone...
Oh, no, there's some dead Damani.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, I forgot about that.
A short, dark Soldam and tall, pale-haired Damani laid sprawled on the ground, staring up the sun with already glazed eyes.
Well, that shows my reading comprehension.
So, I think it's just one pair, though, out of the 6 pairs.
And yeah, nobody dies on Rand's side because they were actually expecting a trap, whereas the Suldam didn't know they were laying a trap. They thought they were there as an honor guard. They were not aware that they were playing a role in an ambush, as far as I know, as far as I can recall.
Yeah. I mean, they knew that Anoth was maybe not necessarily had the best of intentions, though. But they don't have any... They're just following orders, right? They show up.
That's how the next book opens, is with Felendra is one of the Suldam, like the main Suldam here. And she very convincingly argues that like we had no idea what was happening. We got told to go through this hole in the air, that we were going to do this honor with the Daughter of the Nine Moons. We were just here to provide escort and security. Like we were not conscripted to do a conspiratorial thing.
And the inverting hides the weaves as much from her allies as it does from her enemies.
Yep.
So they probably thought it was actually 2 on there.
It's very important that Anoth's disguise start like 3 days before the encounter in order to have the plausible deniability from the Suldam and to have them just go along with it without needing to be friends of the dark or compelled or anything like that.
I find it really interesting that the dragon grows back with Rand's hand.
Yeah, it's part of his flesh now. It's just part of who he is. If the flesh is restored, so too is the more than a tattoo.
I thought that was pretty cool. Because I think normal tattoos would not regrow.
I don't think a normal tattoo would regrow. If we ever figured out how to CRISPR those lizard regrow genes into our bodies, I don't think a tattoo would be brought along with even the most spectacular limb regrowth sci-fi. No, the tattoo would have to be redone like
but it's a magic
normal
tattoo. Yeah.
But it's a magic tattoo. It's part of his... The dragon is one with the land, and the dragon is also one with the flesh of the dragon, like metaphysics.
Yeah, I agree. Couladins wouldn't regrow.
Agreed. Absolutely not.
Yeah. That's how you should test for the dragon. Cut off his hand and see if the dragon...
Seems a little drastic.
So yeah, and then this is where we find out there's something wrong with his eyes. He gets that wavy vision that ends up, I would call him the blind beggar king.
Yeah, his vision impaired rather than fully blind, but like it's bad. Like the sun is 10 times stronger than it should be, and he can barely read, I think, and everything's watery. Like you can't be driving with that kind of vision. That's a serious impairment.
And the wounds in his side are open and bleeding, and I'm not sure if they ever stop bleeding again.
Yeah, he's really just perpetually falling apart at this point. You're leaking, sir.
Like, because those wounds have been fighting for a long time. And he is now kind of suffering.
Kind of? You think he might have crossed the threshold into what you would consider suffering at this point?
Yeah, kind of.
But yeah, no, I think you're right that
the old wounds in his side were knotted with pain. Yeah.
Later, there's a part where he thinks my side wounds break open if I do anything more strenuous than breathe. Mm-hmm. Which means that he's not even getting good hanky-panky anymore. Right?
Without them breaking open.
Right,
well, he might be, but the wounds are breaking open.
I feel like that would be a bit of a downer on the moment. If it's like, don't mind the blood leaking out. It's fine.
I mean, it's never stopped me before.
That's different, you fucking weirdo. This is like a wound.
Oh, okay.
God. Vucci, you're just as bad. Go away.
Trust me, I've hurt myself and had bad cuts. It never stopped anything.
I mean, Henry VIII managed to, like, keep impregnating people while, like, actively having gangrene. So I guess I shouldn't be criticizing anyone.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying.
No, that's valid. That's valid.
Yeah. What, you think a couple of wounds are going to stop a horny teenage boy? No.
That's true.
No.
I continually underestimate the power of the teenage horn dog.
And Min, you think she's gonna accept him being like, I'm hurting tonight?
I was just more thinking that she would not want to like break him any more than he's already broken.
Nah.
Sure, fine. What do I know?
Haven't you ever heard of sexual healing? Come on, there's a whole song.
I'm just saying he says more strenuous than breathe, and all I can think about is heavy breathing. I guess maybe he just accepts it. That's just what it is he's just, like you said at the beginning of this tangent, like they don't heal at this point. They're just perpetually oozing.
And he's so much other kinds of pain. The knot pain, the hand pain, the phantom pain there, just the number of times he has taken hits and fallen, and I'm sure his joints are all fucked up, right?
Oh my God. Just from the martial arts regime he's put himself through. Yeah. His knees are twice the age of the rest of him.
Although I do wonder how much the regular healing is keeping him going.
Oh, yeah. That's always the thing, is you have to be assuming that people are like aging way better if they have regular access to healing for acute injuries. Their overall aging process and like the wear and tear is getting squared away.
Well, and especially the Aes Sedai heal is they heal everything, right?
Yeah.
And so you would think maybe the first time that happens to you, it heals a bunch of like old, you're like, wow, my joints feel really good, and like
right,
my back feels good, and like, yeah, there's just a lot of...
Yeah, Matt's gonna change his tune about healing once the arthritis kicks in his mid-30s. He's gonna be like, okay, all right, Jolene, come back over here.
But I wonder how much of that is unhealable, right? Because they do talk about some of these injuries.
Yeah, Tom's
if that's what your body thinks,
can't
yeah,
unlimp or whatever.
Right. If it's old enough, or if it's like chronic enough, I don't think regular healing can fix it. The field healing that the Aes Sedai use, you need something special.
Get Nynaeve on it. She'll figure it out in like 6 months.
Right. She'll figure it out. Right. Well, it's like when the doctors are like, well, I got to break your bones so they heal right, you know?
Right. Yeah. Barbaric. But yeah, I mean, such is medicine in this day and age.
So this is where Rand just hits total acceptance, and Min vouches for him. Right, he's lost a hand, but there's nothing to do about it, so he's left it behind already.
And Nynaeve, being the normal human being with big emotions, says, you've been hurt. It's all right to grieve. It's all right to feel stunned. It's normal, because she, is many things, but she's not out of touch with her emotions. And as a healer, she knows that, like, this kind of dissociation and compartmentalization is not the long-term mental health sound way to approach this, which again, Rand is not playing for that sort of timeline, but Nynaeve.
Because Nynaeve had her mountain, veins of gold moment when she was drowning. So she's reached emotional sort of equilibrium, whereas Rand is still struggling for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the Suldam, the Shan Chan do not believe that Anath is Semirog at first.
Yeah. Even to the point of staring her down and being like, well, you don't outrank me, even though it's the Lady of Pain giving you a death glare. You just don't know she's the Lady of Pain and you don't believe it, so you're not seeing the death in the glare.
And then, you get the whole prisoners have killed themselves. This always stuck with me. Men and women who had managed to open a vein with teeth or fingernails. Like that level of desperation to literally chew your wrist open to the point where you bleed to death. Like we were just talking about how, yeah, our jaws have that power, but your brain won't let you. How scared do you have to be to overcome that inherent block in your brain to rip at your own flesh to the point where you bleed to death?
Yeah. Yeah, that's quite the reputation preceding you, ma'am.
Right. Well, and yet it's a true perception, right? Some of the way she's tortured people, it's like, yeah, I mean, a clean, quote unquote, death where I bleed out is probably better than whatever she can do to you with the torture and the healing and the pain and knowing that you're dead anyway, right? You're dead in both situations, but like one could be weeks of torment.
Oh, yeah, no, being able to control your own exit when the greatest healer in the world wants to protract your death. Oh, yeah. But yeah, no, it is definitely one of those lines that really stands out and tells you so much and gives you so much weight to this character in very few words. Masterful RJ world building.
Mm-hmm. And then I think we get probably the best summation of Rand's madness in the series, and the thing that really cements my idea of what's going on in Rand's head.
Yeah.
I mean, later it was more confirmed by Sanderson, and he talked about it. But like in Jordan's own words, I think is what Semirog says here is the madness in Rand's head.
Yeah.
The LTT.
Yeah. This whole paragraph is just fantastic. Do you want me to read it, or do you want to read it?
Actually, you should read it because it's in Semirog's voice. Yeah.
Semirog saved him the effort of thinking up a lie. He's insane, she said coolly. Grandal could explain it better than I. Madness was her specialty. I will try, however. You know of people who hear voices in their heads? Sometimes, very rarely, the voices they hear are the voices of past lives. Lanfear claimed he knew things from our own age, things only Luz Theron Telamon could know. Clearly, he is hearing Luz Theron's voice. It makes no difference that his voice is real, however. In fact, that makes his situation worse. Even Grandal usually failed to achieve reintegration with someone who heard a real voice. I understand the descent into terminal madness can be abrupt. Abrupt.
Yeah. Abrupt.
Like, she just cut out all of the support and trust that everyone around him has. The descent into terminal madness can be abrupt means that nobody can trust him anymore. That line will be sticking in their head every time his eyes get dark.
But it is so true, because all you need is a moment where Lewis, the insane person in his head, takes over, and that then becomes Rand. He said that's a problem, right?
Yeah.
Like, he's worried about that. And that's why the abruptness happens, is that it's no longer Rand, it's the insane voice in his head who's in control.
Yep.
And that insane voice, yes, it is the real LTT. The knowledge is real. But I think what's so important in this paragraph is the clue to fix it.
It's the clues here?
Grendel usually failed to achieve reintegration. Usually failed. However, reintegration is the successful way to bring the voice. It is possible for Rand and Lewis there, and this is the first clue we ever get that it is possible for them to reintegrate in a way that brings them together. Before it's like, oh, what are we going to do? Reintegration. We have a word, we have a process that is essentially what happens to Rand later, right? He reintegrates to the point where Rand and LTT are now the same person. He is both, and he has the memories of LTT, even though he is Rand.
Yeah, that's part of how he frames the revelation at the end of Veins of Gold is they were one, they had always been one. They had never been separate people. He literally reintegrates his knowledge of himself to say, I've always been both of these. And that's a huge thing to swallow. But yeah, no, you're totally right. She tells us, yes, he's insane. And also in the same breath, and here is how he can become sane again.
Yeah.
Wow. I never caught that. Nice work.
Oh, thanks. This is one of my favorite little paragraphs, right? I've based so much of my theory on LTT and like going back to the beginning when I've been like, no, this is how it works. I've been very adamant about this. And it's this paragraph that is, and I feel in Jordan's last book, Jordan does a lot of saying, I know there's been a lot of speculation on this stuff. Here's what it means. And so at the end of this book, I really do feel like we got this to this point where Jordan answered a lot of questions going into the last battle. It's why I think he was setting up the last battle, is he was answering questions and laying things out in a way that he hadn't in the previous 2 or 3 books.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
He'd been bringing up more questions for the last 2 or 3 books. Now he's answering them.
Yeah.
How are we going to solve Rand's madness? Reintegration.
Mm-hmm. And first, we're going to lay the problem out on the table, and then we're going to find a solution. Bam, bam.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great.
So he goes to comfort Min, and he has that moment where he like tries to pet her hand with his non-existent hand because he forgets he doesn't have a hand there, and it's all weird and awkward. And she, of course, does the right thing and doesn't react.
Right. Well, and there's also this moment where like he feels her react to Semirog's information, which is this moment of numbness, and then she's fine. She's like, "No, I'm fine. I love him." And then he goes to touch her hand and thinks that that's just as horrible, and she's like, "It doesn't even faze her because like she has gone through this."
I missed that first numbness.
Yeah, she goes through the gauntlet of learning that he really does hear a voice in his head. He really is going insane, and she decides, "I love him anyway." So the physical disability of an already healed stump, like that's nothing compared to what she just decided she was okay with. It's not like you're oozing on her. Like, it's a smoothly healed surface. It's fine.
And it's not like she didn't know he was going to go insane anyway.
Right.
That was baked into the stock price, right? If you want to, use that language. Yeah.
Pants. They killed people together, though?
That's true.
I don't know if Min has managed.
I mean, Semirog does have Min's knife sticking out of her shoulder. It would have only taken a slightly better aim to actually kill Semirog in that moment.
Honestly, I really feel like Min needs to work on her aim. Way too many shoulder shots, girl. You need to just pull a little to the left.
Stop with the flipping it around your fingers tricks. Like, start throwing those knives a little more.
Yeah. I need less like competing with Tom for flashiness and more just bullseye practice. Darts, more darts at the bar.
So Semirog admits to being Semirog to Codswain, which I thought, again, that face down between the two of them is not my favorite.
Yeah, I like Codswain in this moment where she just looks at Semirog and says, "Nice to meet you. I look forward to having long talks together." Like that level of just like dismissiveness, because that is the key to unraveling Semirog, is treating her like a human being.
Right.
And so I like that, but yeah, it's
the eating the beans off the floor thing never felt like a good conclusion to that.
No, it does not. This was a promising start. Codswain being unimpressed with her in this way was a very promising start, but the conclusion of beans was we'll get there when we get there.
We'll get there. The followers talk about how they were taken to a room in the Terraston Palace, and then there was a gateway that they went through. They didn't know what it was. Sean Chan just following orders. Always great policy when there are dark friends around. I
mean, in fairness, they don't usually have Forsaken level dark friends running around, but
true.
I'm just saying they weren't really following like really dark friendly orders. They were just doing like, oh yeah, be an honor guard. Like, just like do your job. Like, just go do your Secret Service detail. Like, it's just following orders, but it's not like following orders to like march people off a cliff. It's like provide security detail at a remote retreat. Like, but it is very helpful evidence in helping Rand be like, I can trust the Sean Chan to not have set this up as a collective, right? He says it later, like, now I've flushed out the Forsaken who was there, I can trust that there's no other Forsaken. So this helps him, I think, establish that of like, okay, Semirog really was super undercover. Like, she did not co-opt the whole system to be Semirog worshippers. Like, nobody knew who she was.
Right, nobody knew that Anath was Semirog. She was just in the right place at the right time so she could influence things. Similar to Halima.
Yeah, very much so. Just like super, like layers deep undercover.
So Rand decides to basically send all the Suldam and Damane back because he still wants the meeting, right? Like, nothing's really changed. He's like, okay, I know you got set up by Forsaken. That's not your fault. Go set up the actual meeting. Go get the actual Daughter of the Nine Moons. Or whoever's in charge and set this fucking meeting up already, right? Like, I don't want to fight you anymore. Just talk to me. Like, please, is basically his message to the Shan-Chan.
Yeah, which is really funny because he's like, I still want to. We'll get to it when we get to the beginning of the next book. He's like, I still want a meeting. And Philander keeps pushing back, like, I don't think anyone in Shan-Chan, the actual like organization, knew this meeting was happening. I think this was entirely a Semirog plot. He's like, I don't care. I still want the meeting, regardless of whether or not it was a plot that no one knew about. I still want it. It's a very weird message she has to take back.
The Damane weeping about being freed.
Yeah, Nynaeve really wants to only send back the people who are complicit in war crimes, and she wants to rescue the actual slaves. And then the slaves all cry that they want their owners. And oh, isn't it weird how the brainwashing makes them all so compliant? And I'm like, Olivia's right there, plot-wise. Right. I mean, she's not literally on the hilltop, but like, Olivia's right there. Like, any one of these women could be the next Olivia, but sure, let's just brush them off as NPCs, Rand. That's great.
I mean, I guess if he wants a treaty, he has to not start by taking away their most powerful weapons.
At which point, we just really need to get into the weeds of, Rand, why are you treating with slavers? Come on.
Because they kicked his ass.
Come on.
Because he says he can't. Right here, he's like, I can't afford it. I can't afford to fight him. I have a last battle coming.
And then what does he do? Decides that he can, in fact, afford it, and he's just going to have to deal. I'm currently at that part of Gathering Storm where he's just like, well, I guess sucks to be everyone because the Shan-Chan didn't make peace with me, but too bad, so sad. And it's just like, you don't need this, Rand. You're going to decide you can live without it later because Tuon won't play by your rules. And I just... don't do treaties with slavers, I say as an American.
So the house is inspected, and what's left behind is, of course, the title of the chapter, which is a plain wooden box.
Yes.
And that is brought to Rand.
And it is full of Adom for men and women.
Men and women, which are just the sad bracelets, right?
Yes, Nynaeve gets very angry when she sees the black metal bracelets and necklaces because last time she saw that, there was only one copy in the whole ass world, and Egyanan and Domon were sailing off into the sunset to drop it into the deepest part of the ocean they knew. And now she's looking at three sets are all set up right there in that box. And she's like, that is the last thing in the world that I expected to see. She's very annoyed.
And it makes sense because now there's no getting it. The secret's out, right? Even if they drop these three in the ocean, there's probably more copies somewhere.
One assumes that these are not the only 3 copies in existence now.
She gave her to somebody to copy. Yeah, she gave him Semirog to copy.
Well, they were taken by Surath, who then gave them to Semirog.
Sure.
Because we do see with Lylwyn and Domon later that she says, well, I gave them to, Surath like confiscated all of my stuff, and I figured it wouldn't be a big deal because, I didn't have a choice, and I figured it'd be fine. And no, it was not fine.
No, it matters. Yeah.
It might have been sort of against your consent to have it taken away, so you're only like halfway responsible for the end of the world nearly happening in Book 11. But,
They shouldn't have kept these stored near Semirog.
Oh, yeah. I kind of think Shadowhuron would have retrieved them from wherever they were stored.
Sure.
But, yeah.
Or he just had more.
Taking the ones from Cadsuane and using those specifically undermined Cadsuane. But yeah, as far as getting a sad bracelet or sad necklace onto Rand, yeah, Shadowhuron could have provided one from anywhere.
Once they've been copied.
Yeah, exactly. And Lylwyn also thinks later on, if I'm recalling correctly, that it wouldn't have mattered if they dumped them over the side or not, and she didn't really care if they did or not, because she knows that Rand has to bow to the Crystal Throne. So if it happens through some means that she was a part of, like, okay, you know, she's willing to not try too hard because she knows how the prophecy has to go. And we know, of course, those are the altered prophecies. They're not even real prophecies because they're from Shan-Chan and
Right.
all of that.
And his kneeling is very perfunctory. Just like, yep, I get that out of the way. Okay, done. And moving on. That doesn't change our relationship at all. I knelt to you to fulfill the letter of the prophecy.
Right. And it's part of why Lywin let the bracelets escape, is because she was like, it'll be fine. And then Rand is like, well, clearly this is all bullshit. Every last bit of it. So I'm just gonna bow to you in a way that means nothing, because this whole thing was a side quest we didn't need. I was praising side quests earlier, but this was not a good side quest.
So this is where we find out that they tried to shield everybody in Rand's group, but they were all holding the power, so it didn't work. And Codswain and her had the ter'angreal, which made a huge difference.
The decisive difference.
Yeah.
This very nearly was a Semirog against 25 and Semirog wins situation. And just a couple of ter'angreal made the final difference.
And it kept everybody alive, right? Nobody died.
Yes, exactly. Rand being captured would have been the headliner of that disaster, but yes, a lot of deaths would also have occurred.
And so then they ask, of course, they're like, by the way, who are you? And he goes, I am Rand al'Thor. I am the Dragon Reborn. If they had wept at hearing Semirog's name, they wailed at hearing his. And is that, like, the idea that the Dragon Reborn is worse than the Forsaken?
I mean, that...
Especially in Shan-Chan lore.
Yeah, I mean, that is a vibe that goes back to, like, book 1. Like, have you heard about the rumors from outside? Like, yeah, the dragon is very much lumped in with the Forsaken as being the worst of them all, / the thing they're afraid of, so you should be even more afraid of it. Like, yeah.
Well, and also, if the dragon is reborn, like, okay, that means you get to be involved in the last battle. Congratulations, the apocalypse is happening in your lifetime. Yeah, all right. Yeah. So there's that fear right there of just like, yep, welcome to the apocalypse.
Yeah. Not a relatable feeling at all.
And that's the end of that POV with Rand, and then we switch to a Matt POV.
Yeah.
So Matt's POV, on the road again. Ashendare slanted across his saddle. Matt sat pips in the darkness among the trees and waited, surrounded by 2,000 mounted crossbowmen. The sun was not long down, and events should be in motion. The Shan-Chan were going to be hit hard tonight in half a dozen places, some small and some not so small, but hard in every case. Moonlight filtering through the branches overhead gave just enough illumination for him to make out Tuon's shadowed face. She had insisted on staying with him, which meant Selucia was at her side, on her dun, of course, glaring at him as usual. There were not enough moon shadows to obscure that, unfortunately. Tuon might be unhappy about what was to happen tonight, yet nothing showed on her face. What was she thinking? Her expression was all the stern magistrate. That's a setup. They're in the dark, about to ambush a bunch of Shan-Chan, which of course is going to make Tuon unhappy. Sort of.
Well, it proves that her Prince of the Ravens candidate is up to the task of ruling a murderous empire.
That's true.
And he's mostly killing
really
Altaran.
Yeah, I was like, he's mostly killing Altarans. There's not a lot of Shan-Chan in the group. So yeah, it's I can see where she's just more curious.
And he's doing it for her specifically. Like, it's hard to be mad when he does the thing for you, you know?
Right, because he talks about pulling the cork out, right?
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing where the Shan-Chan are blocking a pass that he wants to get Tuon through. And if they recognize Tuon, they'll kill her because they're the ones who have been commanded to kill the quote-unquote imposter, which is actually Tuon.
Yeah, well, all of them have heard the rumor that a Tuon person needs to be murdered. It's not that any one band of them is set to it, it's that they all are set to it. Eventually, a band is being led by that one henchman of Suroth's very specifically to kill her, but the entire army is a threat.
Which is crazy, because I just don't really understand how she comes back from that. I guess just in her seat of power, she overcomes it and becomes the official ruler again and takes off the veil.
Yeah, basically, that's what happens is she's able to get back to the seat of power without being killed by the common rank and file. And that allows her to then reassert control and tell the rank and file, stand down, we've resolved the issue. Because it's not that they believe that real Tuon is a problem, it's that they believe there is a fake Tuon out there. So when real Tuon shows up, the whole thing becomes moot.
Got it.
We have a great moment with Matt being the least warlike of everyone in the band, despite being the leader and the genius of the band.
Right.
Mandevwin is like, Lord Matt's lucky and he makes beautiful battles. And Matt snaps, a beautiful battle is when you don't have to fight. Which I appreciate that, because again, you think of Matt as like very happy-go-lucky and good at war and carefree, and yet he's the one over here being like, as the person with the most military power in the world, I am the most critical of the military-industrial complex. Right? That's the position he's in.
Which I feel like takes a certain amount of... It's a veteran stance, but Matt is kind of the ultimate veteran because he's experienced so many different lives and so many different wars through his lives.
Yeah, I'd find it very unbelievable coming from a man who's barely 20, except for the part where he has like 40 different like old men packed together into his head. And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, the amalgamated wisdom of the elders is generally that fighting is the wrong approach. That is a broad consensus across history. So, yeah.
That the cost is just too high.
It's just too much death, too much suffering, too much loss of human potential, too much destruction of the land. Like, it's just, what have wars ever accomplished, really, other than destroying everything and everyone?
Not a lot.
Like, that's what people who are old warheads tend to write about in their cool books that then become the strategy books for the next several generations of war guys. That's where Matt's coming from.
Well, and it's hard not to like look at the Iraq and the Iran war specifically and be like, okay, so what did we accomplish there? And it doesn't feel like a lot.
Yeah.
It feels like we just delayed the inevitable.
And destroyed so many lives, American lives and everyone else's lives. Like, just so much suffering.
Vietnam, Korea, like all those wars, you kind of look at them and go, did we really make anything better?
Right. That argument does run a little thin when you get to World War II. Fighting the Nazis did have to be done.
Yes.
That empirically had to be done, unfortunately. But the broad history of war, ancient war, modern war, it's a whole lot of head desking when you really like zoom out and say, what did this accomplish? Like,
and I would argue that even World War II didn't have to happen if different terms had been come to after World War I.
For real, though. That's so for real.
that how much of the economic pain Germany was suffering led to the rise of the dictatorship that caused World War II.
And there's a really good argument for World War I only starting because a bunch of arms dealers really wanted to make sales.
I haven't heard that one, but I believe you.
Behind the bastards, man. It's a terrible look at human history. The last few centuries.
I know way less about World War One. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Why is the love of money the root of all evil? Oh
yeah. No, it's the arms race that led to the powder keg that was the start of World War One was very much like Behind the Bastards made a several-hour argument for how it could be laid at the feet of a very few people who just wanted to sell guns. Whether or not that's true, your mileage may vary, but a voice in my headphones told me that it was true. For several hours.
Oh, okay.
So I believe it.
Yeah. That's fair. Yeah.
Full disclosure. Like, it's just one of those voices in my head.
I literally said, I was talking to somebody, and I was like, I have to listen to less podcasts because there were too many voices in my head telling me too many things. And it was giving me too many, like, I had to listen to my own voice again.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean... As Allie puts it, R.E. needing to listen to something at all times. She never shuts up. This person in my head. She never shuts up. I have to drown her out with something.
Oh, and I definitely use audiobooks. But I feel like at least audiobooks are more of a story. Like, podcasts are too much opinion.
Nah, that just depends on your podcast.
Yeah.
That's like saying books are too much opinion. Like, no, it's just a medium.
Yeah, you're right. That's a terrible way of putting it. I don't know how I'm trying what I'm trying to say, but like
the podcasts you were listening to were clearly too much opinion.
Yeah, but also there's just you're so you get into that friendship situation with the person.
Yes, the parasocial relationship.
The parasocial relationship.
Yeah, no
right?
audiobook has ever. Well, Wheel of Time kind of has with Michael and Kate just because of the sheer number of hours that they put me to sleep. But that's different. That's different.
And at this point, I have a legit social relationship with them.
Also that. Yeah, right? Yeah. There's no para to that. That's just a real
There's no
thing.
para to that. Yeah.
But yeah, no, for sure. And people have that relationship with us, which is cool to think about.
Yeah. So, but I find that interesting sometimes and difficult to reconcile.
Yeah. Yeah, there is definitely I am so prone to agreeing with people when they're talk to me that, sometimes I have to be careful of who I'm letting talk to me because I am so prone to just agreeing. I actually had a really cool moment today where I was listening to a podcast and going, wow, I guess I'm a shit person for thinking the things that I thought before. And I had to catch myself and be like, no, this is this podcaster's opinion. And it's different than your opinion, and you can just let those two pieces of information exist in the world without like having one negate the other or put a value judgment on it. And it was like one of the first times I've ever really in real time been able to catch myself and be like, this is what you're doing and you can stop. You can just not engage in that self-depreciation.
It's hard not to agree with the loudest voice in the room or the latest voice in the room.
Yeah, it can be done, but my God, is it such a labor of conscious effort.
And you have to know where you stand on things. You have to make decisions and be like, no, I have these opinions. And I'm willing to change with new evidence, but I'm not willing to change with new opinions.
Or new decibel levels.
Yeah, or new decibel levels. Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Just because someone's shouting it, I still don't believe it.
Right. And it's like, you want to intake information. That's a big part of why I listen to podcasts, is to learn things. I want people to bring me information that will help me inform the opinions I hold. But yeah, it's a delicate balance to make sure I am forming my own opinion and not just parroting what other people tell me. Which
I feel like art, it starts out the same way. Often artists start out and they're usually copying one or two artists, or a writer is copying the style of one or two artists.
Books that start as fanfics,
and then you read more, and then you bring in more different aspects of it, and then you realize you have your own style, and you want to be true to that without necessarily ignoring new information. You still want to evolve your style, but you want to be your style instead of going back to copying somebody else's. Or let's say you want to change it, you don't want to just copy a new style.
Right. Yeah, totally. You can't exist in a vacuum, but you also do want to chart your own course. There is a dynamic tension there that is really at the core of being human, and why AI will never make good art.
And the core of, I think school needs to do a better job of essentially saying this is the line between plagiarism and inspiration. And what they do is they say plagiarism is this huge no-no. Don't ever do it. It's the end of your career, the end of everything you've ever done. Do not plagiarize. We will fucking arrest you and put you in jail for the rest of your life.
Break your kneecaps. Yeah,
break your kneecaps. But also learn from the masters, because they're great, And there's no real definition and no real separation of like where those lines are. And I think that's where you really do have these kids who plagiarize all the time and don't really understand the difference of copying somebody's words and being inspired by somebody's words.
I am so glad I went to a private hippie school where none of these trends really made much of an impact. Like, God, I can't even imagine not grokking the concept of drawing inspiration and then generating your own content. Like, hippie school failed in a lot of things, but not in that. Creative writing was a priority.
For me, a lot of people I was around, it was just laziness, right? So like, how quickly can I get this assignment done? Well, it's a lot quicker if I steal ideas and words and concepts from something I've already read,
Yeah, the school I went to the way that everything worked, that was not an option. That was just a completely untenable strategy that would never have worked.
Well, this is where the problem is. People worked the metrics, right? And the metrics were a grade. How did you do well on the grade? You produced a paper that had blah, 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 blah. What was the quickest way to do that? In a lot of ways, cheating.
I mean, this is why I was able to just like sleepwalk my way through 2 years of high school and then get my GED without studying, was because like I could do all of that. I mean, not the plagiarizing, but just the like gaming the system and just learning how to get the points. Again, hippie school, we didn't have grades. So there's no system to game. There was no cheat code because it was just all this like deep interpersonal relationships where you have to like make art in conversation with your teacher's lessons, and like they know if you're bullshitting because there's no points. And yeah, I got to the system and it's like, and then I was shocked at how many people were failing to gamify the system. Not even cheating, but just like gamifying. Like you guys don't
Just
realize
gamify,
that
yeah.
all the bold and italic words are all you have to pay attention to in the textbook, and literally nothing else matters. Like no one else is noticing this. Like, really?
So I have to take these compliance tests at work every once in a while, where it's like you'll watch these little cartoon figurines move around, you listen to what they're saying, and then you take a little like multiple choice test at the end of it, right? And I blow through those things in. I mean, I don't. They're up on the screen for a second, you know.
But you don't even let the animation play. You're just like,
yeah, I don't even let the animation play out because like I can gamify the question so easily. I can get 9 out of 10 right, usually on the first try, and then it tells you which ones you got wrong, right? Yeah, and then it lets you retake the test. So I just like blast through it, get 9 out of 10 right. That's usually passing. If it's not, I retake it and correct the one I got wrong.
Right.
And it's like people are like, wait, how do you keep up on those? They take me forever. And I'm like, well, I don't actually watch them. Like, well, then how do you get it right? I don't read the material. Well, then how do you get it right?
It's a game.
Also, I've seen a million of these things. You know what? I know not to click on the fucking virus, okay? Like,
it's not even like an extreme example of the levels of pattern recognition that we have to deploy here. This is child's play pattern recognition.
This is child's play, right? Yeah, and oftentimes I don't even read the questions. I just go to where it says all of the above, click on it, and move on. Right? If it has one of those at the bottom, it's almost always the last option if there's an all of the above. If not, there's a none of the above. The other option, if there's not another all of the above, none of the above, it's always the longest text because they want you to actually read the correct answer for once because they know you don't read the text. So they're like, okay, if you read this, you'll for once read the correct answer. But you don't have to read it because it's the longest text. So you click on that. Like, there's so many ways to gamify those questions without reading anything.
Yeah.
It's almost embarrassing how quickly I can get through those.
Oh my god. Yeah, totally. This is so far off topic.
This is so fun. Hey, you know what? I'm loving this chapter. Honestly, this is episode 500. I am all about tangents. I'm all about like, let's take forever to record. Let's enjoy the fact that this is just like, I am mind blown that we are at this point. 500 episodes is so many episodes.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. And so much has changed in my life, the podcast, the world, since we started this in late 2016, I think. No, early 2016. April, because remember, April 21st was, we didn't get it up on April 20th for some reason, but we got it up on April 21st. Can't imagine why that was.
Yeah. All right, so here, the next thing I've got is this cool thought from Matt about how Tuon had promised not to betray him and that had to cover trying to betray his plans, yet she must wish she had that promise back. Like, he knows that he implicitly trusts that she'll keep her promise. Like, if she can find a way out of it, she will. If she can find a loophole, she will. But she made a promise, and rather than break it, she's going to wish that she could have it back. Like, that implicit trust between the two of them is very important for their relationship.
Can I talk about how much Robert Jordan's ability to trust in people's words broke me as an adult? Because you can't. You can't. Like, this, just, people will not keep their word. Like, that's just something I've had to realize. I thought all the fantasy I read, I thought what someone claimed, and also, you know, my fucking whatever's wrong in my head, right? I believe people.
You're just autistic. There's nothing wrong in your head.
Well, you know, I'm not diagnosed, but yeah, sure.
It's a peer review diagnosis. The fucking doctors don't know shit about shit.
So, my autism basically says, like, trust people, right? Like, of course, take them at their word.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely was taught to believe that words mean things. just in general.
Yeah.
And then
In
specifically
general.
when people promise things that would extra mean things that would actually, and that people would like completely burn all connection with me if I ever broke a promise, right? Like, I mean, the way that I have had to learn that it's okay to fail to do something that you told someone you were going to do, and it's not the end of the relationship and the end of the world, has been a big deal, because I thought that it was like I was basically, you know, the worst. So I
How do you learn that exactly?
I just started making promises and not fulfilling them, and people haven't cut ties with me. I've gotten better about committing to things, to overcommitting. I spent a lot of my life just not committing to doing things because I was so afraid of what would happen if I couldn't fulfill it. And eventually, I think in large part because of podcasting, there's this weekly thing where like we do drop the ball sometimes, and I've just had to live with it, and like the sky has not fallen. And I've allowed myself to like commit to a little bit more. Like the sky continues to not fall when I have to like cut corners and do things late. And like, it's just, the sky didn't fall. You basically, you are how, I don't know how you find a you, but I guess I'm trying to be that for you, but you know, yeah, I don't know. It's only with small stakes things. It's not like with big stakes things. It's not like I can scale this to important parts of my life or anything.
Right. No, and there's a certain amount of, I think, having gone through burnout for a bunch of years where I failed and failed and failed to succeed in anything I tried, and didn't have the energy to really finish anything. You know, and again, I think the podcast did heal me of that a little bit.
Right. The sky doesn't fall. You keep producing it. People keep coming back despite the fact that you fucked up. Like, right.
And the fact that it got big in the first place, that like there's people out there who want to listen to what I have to say, I think was such a huge moment for me, from a point where I you know, I think in my 20s I just had no confidence, because I'd like, you know, going through high school, I was the shit, man. I could do anything. I was a good swimmer. I was getting top A's. You know, I couldn't get a girlfriend, but I'll figure that out later. You know, and then you sort of keep doing that stuff in college, and it's just not working out quite as well, you know? And like, you're just seeing everybody start to succeed when you're not. And then you get to adult life and you can't seem to get a job. And it was just this whole thing where I was like, I feel like I'm getting worse as time goes on, and I completely burned out trying to keep up, you know, and then had to recover, come back, and sort of approach life from not what I think I should be doing, but what can I do and how do I build on that?
yeah. And this is why you don't need to spend several $1,000s and several months of your life having a doctor tell you that, no, you're not autistic, because look at your job record.
Right.
You don't need that. You don't need that. You don't need that. You are living the life you need to live, sans that. But that's a very autistic story. Peer review diagnosis.
I know. I understand. The burnout and the comeback. Yeah.
I'm going to drag you to support group someday, man. I am trying so hard to keep us on this damn book.
I'm not.
You're really not. You're really not. But like, as an editor and someone who desperately wants to be at What Idol, I'm like, sir, this book though.
Gotcha. Okay. So we talk about the fact that Matt has essentially machine guns pointed at an army trapped inside a V-shaped canyon.
Two lines facing each other but pointed down. It's an absolute killing field. He loses no men and kills everybody down there. It really does remind, those descriptions very much did remind me of like a machine gun ambush, just like this rapid fire tearing people's limbs off. Like, it's very nasty. And it pairs well with him thinking about kissing Tuon by moonlight. It's just like, he's sitting on this ridge top, and just all this stuff is happening while he just sits there, right? Like, all the plot is happening around him, but all he's doing is just sitting there.
Right. I kind of had trouble talking about how do we structure this, because it's really just one event that happens on these 5 pages.
He's got the women with him, and he interacts with them, right? He's got Tuon and Selusha, who he's interacted with. We've talked about that a bit. Though there's an interesting thing here from Teslin where she warns him against Jolene. She's like, just so you know, Jolene is still very much a threat to you. Like, she still wants you as a warder. She will do underhanded things to make it happen, maybe. And it never comes to anything, but it's interesting in the Teslin really likes Matt story. And like the getting respect from a red story is very, very interesting. And this is a good part of that. She's like, no, that green is like a problem for you. Like, be careful. And then Tuon is shitty about it, but like, that's not interesting. What's interesting is just the like, Teslin doesn't just like Matt. She's looking out for him.
Now, he's got the medallion, which will protect him, right, from being bonded. He does think about that, right? Because remember, who bonded Rand? Alana. So remember when Alana, she was thinking like, I want to bond one of the 3 boys, but Perrin's got Fael protecting him, and I don't want to mess with that. And Rand has that stupid medallion, so I can't really bond him.
Matt, but yeah.
So I've got to bond Matt. Sorry. Matt has the stupid medallion, so I have to bond Rand.
Does he have the medallion in her?
Back then? Well,
it's after the way, so he has it, but...
Yeah. I don't know if she knows about it.
I don't think she knows about it, but I think more...
At least for plot reasons, that's why.
Yeah, well, I think it's more that Teslin's like, beware of Jillian's word games. Because, like, she's gonna keep trying. She's just like, Teslin is worried about it enough to bring it up, and that's a nice thing about the Teslin-Matt relationship. Never comes to anything with Jolene. And then Teslin is the vehicle for us to get the exposition about why Matt is doing this, why Matt is mowing down these men with effectively machine guns in a valley, why he's doing all that death. We might not quite have comprehended it, and Teslin provides the vehicle for Matt to be like, if I piss them off really bad by killing a lot of people, they will come running to deal with me, and then I can slip through the past that they have abandoned in order to come deal with me. And it's not just this one attack, right? Him and Talmanis and probably some other leaders are doing this multiple times across the night. This is a lot like a Teralda's campaign at the beginning of the book in many ways. This is a very similar playbook, just at a much smaller geographic scale.
And if anything, I'd say the whole point of setting Teralda up to do that at the beginning is be like, look, here's the strategy that worked from a mastermind, one of the 4 great generals, and here's Matt doing it again, instinctively copying that just to get through a pass.
Because that's what a great general does.
That's TM. What, yep. And then Demandred takes off at a canter on his horse, where he will somehow, he could not outpace the Racken. Well, he can if he can travel, which clearly he can do because he's Demandred.
Yeah. At this point, Demandred wants
Skim
this campaign to work because he does show up in time. But yeah, I mean, clearly, he's just skimming and
clearly.
Pretended to have a horse, I guess.
Yeah, but he's not actually doing the riding, right? Like, he's just...
It's all
that's how he stays that fat. And yeah, the horse can carry him that far because he, like, canters off, like, 10 feet and then, like, stops, opens the door.
Yeah, exactly.
Opens the gateway. Takes it through. Yeah.
And he says that they've got 1,000 more people on his tail than they were expecting, but it's no big deal. And Matt's
3,000, 4,000, what a bit,
is like, okay, I can handle that. And then the whole band goes, okay, we can handle that. And Matt thinks, I forgot that about the band. That's something that makes the band unique, is if I take it in stride, they literally don't worry about it. And that is such a unique thing in an army, because he's, dealt with all these other bodies of different kinds of soldiers since. And he's like, I'm back with the band. They just trust me to a degree that is insane.
He recalls kissing Tuon.
They're continuing to make out.
Yeah. But only, like, as much as she wants, right? Like, she kissed him once, and then he tried to kiss her again. She's like, don't be greedy. You get one.
And, like, another night, he goes to kiss her, and she punches him instead.
Right.
Like,
he's like, oh, that was my kidney. Oh,
yeah,
God.
So they're having a, like, taming of the shrew sort of quote-unquote cute make-out sessions at the edges of the screen. I think that the don't be greedy line is cute, but the punching him so hard he's worried that she cracked a rib is not funny. But I do think the don't be greedy line is very cute, and I can imagine it, like, with the imperiousness, and, like, she's learning how to have a makeout session, but also needing to assert control. Like, I do think that that's very cute.
Right, exactly. Right. Because she's like, this is her first time kissing anybody, right? So she's probably, like, absolutely, I mean, if you remember back the first time you kissed somebody, it was just incredible.
I mean, learning how to make out is a good time. It's a good time.
Yeah.
And Matt is very experienced at it, so it's not like 2-1's having like a first time on first time kind of, like all that awkwardness. Like, but then she, because of who she is, has to reassert control the second that like the kiss is over. She's like, oh no, gotta like bring all that giddiness back inside and like pretend that it's not happening. Very, very funny, very cute.
The 3,000 Lancers Vannon had found, mostly at times with a few Shanchan, might or might not be those Master Roydell had marked on his map. But they are, right? They turn out to be?
I don't think it matters. I think that there's a couple of bands and they all get slaughtered in the same night, so it's sort of moot.
But I think the whole point is the maps are really good.
Yes.
Right? Roydell makes really good maps, and they like know, he's like, oh, I know exactly where we are based on the map.
Yeah, they're extremely accurate, extremely to scale, extremely up to date. They're as good as you can get without, drones or whatever.
Yeah. His own maps were fine, but those he had from other men were the work of masters too. He acquired only the best.
Yeah, Roydell is not just a map maker, but a curator of maps. And so, yeah, Matt now has just the very best possible geographic intelligence he could have.
Until he gets gateways in the sky.
Well, until he gets gateways in the sky, yes. At that point, he has a live feed from a drone, which is better.
Yeah.
Well, not even from a drone, from a stationary drone.
So they get in position, they take all the horses, they hobble them and put feed bags in so they're eating instead of wickering or whatever, right? They're just keeping them quiet, and off the trail.
Here, stuff your face.
Yeah,
just eat.
And
snacks.
it's like, we're not going riding, right? If we have to, there's no way we're gonna turn around and run. We don't have swords. They just have crossbows, and crossbows are useless from horseback. So if they get charged, you fire crossbows till you're dead.
Yeah. Some of the other guys are like, well, traditionally we would have the ability to run away on horses. And he's like, well, traditionally I screw tradition and do something different. So
right.
That's what we're going to do. And everyone's like, all right, that's what Matt says to do. We're not even going to bother arguing. Because he understands that he has, a machine gun in a world with no guns. And he's like, I got this. It'll be fine.
And it's a different kind of warfare. It's ambush warfare. They're not face-to-face fighting. Yeah, this is guerrilla warfare.
And then Teslin says, like, hey, you have to go render aid because of the rules of war. And Matt says, nope, new rules. I'm deciding. I'm much like Rand gets to break all bonds. I am the god of war and battles. So I get to decide that there are new rules of war. And I'm not helping them, even though that is technically the ethical thing to do. It doesn't work strategically for this moment. So,
and I like how they dulled all their armor, and the nobles were like protesting, and the regular commoners were like, "Yep, no problem, totally makes sense. Don't want. I want to hide. Hiding's not a bad idea."
Yeah, the horsemen are like, "Well, I have to stand out and be noble and shiny," and all the commoners and all the foot soldiers are like, "I would like to live." So, yeah.
All right, and then I have a sentence that I think might contain one of the most suspicious sentences I've come across in a long time. See if you can spot it. I'm going to read the whole paragraph. Tuon and Selucia kept him company, and so did Teslin. A gusting breeze had sprung up from the west that tugged at cloaks, but of course Aes Sedai could ignore such things, though Teslin held hers shut. Selucia let the gusts take her cloak where it would, oddly, but Tuon took to holding hers closed with one hand.
Yeah, I pinged on that too, especially because of the oddly. I'm like, is Selucia supposed to be a red herring Semirog situation or something? Like, is she a Sul dog? What is going on?
What is going on? Why does she ignore the cold?
I'm assuming that the ignore heat and cold trick has somehow been passed on through some other like monk lineage of like fun mental tricks that like Selucia has been trained in, because it is ostensibly outside of channeling.
That's a good point. Right. That she is sort of like a deadly with hands and feet trained monk, and having the void of some kind that let her ignore the heat and the cold would make sense.
Right, exactly. It is a true like combat meditative technique that has broken containment from, I mean, it even has in Randland, right? Like swordsmen talk about the flame and the void. So like it makes sense that a bodyguard like Selucia could have learned it martially. But yeah, that's the only explanation, or that she's an Aes Sedai or a Marath Damani, or whatever they want to call it.
Grendel.
Or Grendel. Right, exactly.
Grendel in disguise. That's what I'm going with.
Totally. Like, yeah, I pinged on that line too of like, why? That's got to be a red herring that he was trying to put out there to confuse us.
Just like Van and Dread.
Yeah. Solushadol? Grandusha? No. Grandusha is not.
No,
yeah,
Solushadol.
All right, cool. Van and Dread and Solushadol. This is great. Creating this whole like AU situation as we go through.
Because like we've already had a lot of things drop about how Solutia is much more badass than we would suspect, right? Mm-hmm. Now Vannon, it's a little easier because he sort of pops up newly. I think the problem with Solutia is she's been with Tuon since she was a small child.
Yeah, it's a bit of a longer game than the plot allows for.
Yeah. Vannon could have come up with his reputation after the war.
Yeah, he could have planted that into people's minds and created his... But yeah, no, Solutia and Tuon's relationship is impossible to feign.
Okay, so we're just going to have to go with it's her monk training where she's ignoring the cold and accidentally letting that show.
Yeah, exactly. She's so worried for Tuon, she's forgetting to act like a normal person who doesn't have super skills. Ugh, there's this annoying moment where Matt treats Teslin and Tuon as both being just people who were squabbling to annoy him rather than like a slaver and a slave attempting to have an interaction. And it's just very frustrating how much he downplays the very like real reality of the situation. Just be like, girls, stop fighting. It's like when he does the same thing to Egwene and Tuon later in the meeting that they have. It's just very like, Matt, you're not respecting the fact that the one is a slaver. You're not giving proper weight and gravitas to the fact that she thinks that torture and enslavement and owning people is okay. You're just completely ignoring that.
Well, he's just not listening to the argument on either side. He doesn't care who's right or who's wrong. He's like
he's like apolitical.
Right.
He's pretending that he's apolitical, but that's not a thing. Being apolitical is a political stance.
It's women's circle business. That's I think what he's going with, right? Is like these are women bickering. I don't want to get involved. I know. I know. But again, the slaver is only enslaving women, right? It's women enslaving other women.
Oh my God. It doesn't affect me directly, so I don't need to care about other people's human rights. Get your realism out of my fantasy.
I came here for escape, damn you.
I was going to point out the thing where Matt sarcastically asks about omens and Tuon assumes that he said that unironically.
Oh, about the owl.
Because he's completely being ironic just for something to break the silence. And she's like, oh, I'm so glad you're taking an interest. And it's like, he's not taking an interest, Tuon. He's teasing you.
Well, and again, her thing is like, an owl hooted twice. That means someone will die soon. It's like, okay.
Well, okay. Yeah. Fine. Not inaccurate.
But kind of always true as well, right?
Like which one of these 4,000 men who died was going to have a significant life otherwise, and it is portentous that he's going to be killed. There's 4,000 deaths that are about to happen, ma'am.
So Vannon comes running back, right? Always an improbable sight in a saddle, because he's not always that heavy.
And then the armored train stops in a position that is so perfect, Matt blames Taviran. They stop exactly where he wants them to be. I agree.
I think I have. Yeah. I mean, I don't think we have any other reason than Taviran, right? Like.
Yeah. And then he says he gives the signal. And did you notice that the light that Teslin uses is red? And how smart that is?
Yeah. Why is that?
Because red doesn't ruin your night vision. If you're doing astronomy and you want to look down at your star chart and then back up at the sky without ruining your night vision, you use a red light. It literally, the way that your pupils do and don't dilate, in red light, you don't lose night vision. And so she picked red light so that way all the archers wouldn't suddenly be blinded. Even though they were basically shooting fish in a barrel, she picked the color of light that would make it easiest for them to do their job with no casualties on their side.
And we find out only the first 40 or so are the actual Shan Chan out of the 4,000.
Yeah, 1% was invaders 1%. And the rest was your own people. Good job. We love war. War is great. Men screaming as loudly as the horses. That just feels like some nightmare World War I battlefield sort of moment, you know?
All right, so I had a small problem with the numbers because everybody, they've got 1,000 people on each side. Everybody shoots twice. That's 4,000 bolts. There are 4,000 horsemen. I don't believe that one bolt per horseman is anywhere close to kill.
Yeah. He does mention on the second round that some bolts punch through men to kill men behind them. So there's the implication that some of these bolts are doing double duty.
Okay.
But it's
2 rounds just doesn't seem like enough to take out the entire 4,000. That's all I'm saying.
And in fairness, they are all reloading for a third round. They don't expect 2 rounds to do the job. Everyone does reload, and then when they go to pick their targets, they realize that they managed to kill everyone in 2 rounds. Which again, that's got to be the Taviran, right? That every bolt was able to do that. Because they were prepared for that to not be correct. They were not assuming that 2 rounds were going to do it. So, yeah, the Taviran was just real strong with that because Matt's asking for an improbable campaign to work out. But it's a nasty scene. And he's shredding men and horses with these things and then just leaving them to bleed out on the road. Yeah. Like, it's a nasty, nasty machine gun mess that he leaves behind.
Just then you're caught in the crossfire, so there's nowhere to go.
Right, because if you get hit in the arm from one side and in the gut from the other side, you're not dead right away, but you're dead.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Especially without help.
Exactly. Like, who's coming to get you? You are the help. Right? And everyone died. There's no one to run and get help, and where are you going to get it from? Like, you're all going to bleed out by morning. A couple of them are going to crawl away and find a farmhouse to get, like, nursed in by some Florence Nightingale character. But, like, that's not a military recovery.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of feels like all the stuff I've been hearing about Ukraine and, like, the Russian soldiers who get wounded on the Ukraine side who just suicide because there's no help coming from their side.
Oh, Russia. You're so kind to your people.
So, you hear about that and it's like, yeah, that's what people do because it's like you're wounded, you're on the battlefield, you can't get out, there's no help coming. You've been told horror stories about what the other side's going to do to you. Which
is nonsense in actuality, but also, like, dying of your wounds is not a pleasant way to go. I've read enough stories
which is most likely what's going to happen.
Yeah, no. If you have all these weapons lying around, it makes sense to not let bacteria be your end. It just does.
Yeah. So it's a brutal call to make for sure.
Yeah.
On the battlefield.
But yeah, Matt just fucking bails on all of them and is like, "Yep, that's your world now."
To quote Tom, war is just fools killing other fools for foolish reasons.
Yeah. Yeah. And in the words of, System of a Down, why do they always send the poor? Why don't princes fight the war?
Yeah. You know why.
Yeah,
I know
we all know why. It's rhetorical. It's System of a Down.
And a couple of people maybe get away. Like, there's a couple of horses running.
Yeah, but 2-1 is impressed with how ruthless this is. She's like, ooh, a lion can have no mercy. Let's kiss again.
Mm-hmm. And this is where he's like, this is a new kind of war. He can still hear them screaming. It was silent on the road, but he could still hear the screaming. So that's just echoing in his head, I assume.
Right. He knows what's happening back there. Men are succumbing to horrific injuries he inflicted with no one to help them in the dark. It's not great, Matt. You should feel bad. 2-1, stop feeling turned on. Incorrect response.
Gathering his men, he led them down the road, down the north side of the hill. There was no need to let the survivors see how many they were. In a few hours, they would join up with the men from the other hill, and a few hours more with Carloman. Before sunset, they were going to hit the Shanshan again. He intended to make them run to pull that bloody stopper for him.
Just like Rhoda Lituralda.
Yep. Do we get an idea of how many people he kills? Because it's 4,000 there. There's at least 2 more places where they're doing that. So, they might not be as big, but figure, another 2,000 at each.
I mean, he's probably not crossing 10,000 deaths in one night, but he's getting uncomfortably close to not be calling it a war crime or something. Like, one general being responsible for that much death in a single night. Like, that's a lot of death, my dude. I feel like maybe you should give up a critical body part in recompense for that. Hopefully there's some weird, creepy, interdimensional aliens that can help me out with that desire.
If there always is a saying that might represent giving up a part of your body for a wound you give to somebody else, like an eye for an eye. That might be applicable.
You should be a writer. That's a really cool thing you just came up with there.
Maybe he should take his eye. Oh wait, yeah. So yeah, that's a fun one. I love that scene of him just absolutely massacring. Like, you see Matt finally back with the band, finally back on the warpath, finally back in his element of, yeah, he's gonna be lucky, he's gonna kick some ass, and like really getting ready for the last battle. It's fun to see Matt back in his element.
I mean, in a way, like, we just saw Rand really hit like peak Rand, and then he hit the thing that begins his really sharp descent. Matt has now hit peak Matt. This is now the Matt we think of. He's got his hat, he's got his army, he's got his confidence in synthesizing all his memories. He's like dealt with the 2-on thing almost. Like, this is really peak Matt. He's come back into his fullness. He's out of that horrid slump that the whole Ebu Dar tangent brought upon him. He has he hasn't been with the band since he tried to rescue Egwene from the Aes Sedai, right? Like, this has been a long time since we've been back with this Matt, and it's glorious. Even though there's a lot of death, it is glorious to see him reunited with the band and able to do all that magic stuff.
In the same way, it's really nice to see Perrin reunite with Fail and become back to peak Perrin. He has everything he needs, which is, again, why I don't like when Sanderson goes back on that and sort of there's still marital issues, right? I don't like that he rehashes that. I really wish that they just kind of resolved that and moved on. But, you know, Sanderson rehashes a lot of the three boys' relationships in the first book. So, but in Knife of Dreams, Jordan completes a lot of the characters. He brings them back to their full power.
Yeah. And you get to see them with all the little details that Ariel puts in her transition posters. You know, like, this is the point at which they're really hitting. I mean, there's a couple details that technically haven't happened yet, but like, this is where they're reaching that point of like
the fulfillment of prophecy,
their companions, their costumes, their weapons, their powers, they're overcoming their doubts, the big boss battle that they've managed to get through. Like, each of them has gone through all of that, and they just are glorious, and we're ready to send our level 20s at the Dark One.
Right, yeah, we're ready for the last battle. Is sort of what this feels like. Is like, and that's why I think this book was so well received. Is it's like, okay, obviously, this is gearing up for the last battle. We are on the march for the last battle. We are getting to an end of this series.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's my feeling every time I read this book, from the first time through this time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's why I consider it part of that final chapter, right? That final... It's not a final 3 books. It's a final 4.
Absolutely.
You know, that is the final quarter of the series. The first 3 is quarter 1. The next 3 is quarter 2, and then 7, 8, 9, 10. The next 4 are quarter 4 or quarter 3.
Yeah.
And then the next 4 are quarter 4.
3, 3,
so
4,
it's 3,
4.
3, 4, 4, 4 are the 4 quarters of the series.
Absolutely. And then New Spring is just a nice little thing that loops back around between the beginning and the end.
Yep.
It's the connective bead on the bracelet.
It's the string that goes through it, which is Moraine, of course. Yeah.
Because the story really is about Moraine more than anyone else.
Really, yeah, absolutely.
Like, the story is about Rand as a phenomenon, but the character is Moraine. That's the one who actually unifies everything in the bring it down to earth. You know, Rand is a force of nature. He's not down to earth. He is the earth. It's totally different. Right. Wow. Episode 500, dude.
Episode 500 in the bag.
We fucking did. That was a long episode, but befits us. Very much befits us.
It was, in fairness, it was also a long chapter with a lot of density.
Because it's Knife of Dreams in its conclusion phase. It's so good. It's just so meaty.
And it's Matt and Rand, which are also, you know, pretty dense. That's like the center.
It's glorious. I love doing this stuff.
Oh man, no, I'm so excited. I'm so excited to be at episode 500. And thank you to everybody out there who listens. Thank you to everybody who supports us financially. Everyone who supports us in all the other ways that we've been supported, which are numerous, too numerous to name here. You know, I'll be the first to say that this accomplishment is everybody's.
Oh yeah,
right. who's participated.
Yeah, to paraphrase Brandon Sanderson, this is not our podcast. This is your podcast.
Yeah. It's amazing how much the fan feedback makes the result.
Yeah. Yeah, truly. I mean, doing this just into the void with no feedback would be a very different experience.
And of course, a huge thank you to you, Aradia, for stepping up and taking over and just making it,
the ultimate fan contribution.
The ultimate fan contribution of like becoming the co-host, but also like even before that.
Yeah. Yeah, I did lead the pack of rabid fanatics that was clogging the Discord during your live recordings for sure.
All right. Well, I think that's it for episode 500. I don't want to turn recording off, but I think it is time.
Yeah. Thank you again so much to everyone. This has been great, and we will see you next week for episode 501.
See you next week, 501. Yeah. Jesus.
I joined just before episode 300. I joined right before episode 300. So I've now done 200 episodes. It's fantastic.
Okay. Wow. Wow.
And yeah, if we do circle back around and have to redo as many books as we do in order for me to be able to have done the whole series, I think we are going to get to 1,000, honestly, to come back all the way around to book 5 or whatever.
Well, let's see. 11 books is 500, right? Mm-hmm. And we have 3 more plus the 5. We have 8 more books. So it's going to be, well, plus we have to get through the rest of this book. So it's really...
And New Spring.
10.5 to 8.5. It might be close. I think we're going to get closer to like 800 or 900 if we do it that way.
Probably, yeah. Yeah, so I'm guessing in the 900s.
But then there's New Spring
so
too.
We'll see. We might get to put a comma in our episode numbering, but we might not. We will see. We have a few years to figure that out.
No. That is a long commitment because another 500 episodes will be another basically 10 years at the rate that we're going.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll see. But for now, it's a new 100. That's very exciting.
It's a new 100. There's a 5 at the beginning of all the episodes.
Yeah, that's absolutely bonkers. And
half 1,000.
Yeah, we will see you all next week. Bye.
Bye.
Definitely do the Zoom recording because I continue to have, I think my computer's not getting Windows updates anymore. So there's something going cattywampus with its little brain. And just let's make sure to have the Zoom on.
Okay. Zoom recording is on. So have you had any issues with your own recording yet?
Not yet. Well, I've had one say that I've run out of disk space right at the end of recording. Okay. That was a Hot Nuance episode. And then yesterday, I was recording with Steve Barnes, who we had on as a guest, Sweet Child of Time. I was on Sweet Child of Time. We talked about Time Bandits, which was a trip. Definitely go listen to that when it comes out. I'll put the link in the show notes. But that we were recording on Zencastr, which is a web-based platform, but I also was doing a local recording because I don't trust web stuff. And sure enough, there was tons of connection issues for me with
Okay, those of you who are watching, my girlfriend just tried to run behind me with a blanket over her head to be not suspicious. And then it fell off, and she just... It was about the most unsuccessful attempt to be stealthful I think I've ever seen in my life.
Oh my god, Emery.
That was good. That was good. I needed that. All right.
She failed that stealth roll with a natural one.
Yeah. That was bad.
Just this blanket just sort of rose up behind you and moved like really mysteriously, and then it like fell to the ground to reveal Never like running away.
It's like those videos you see of little kids who throw up the sheet and then try and dive through the doorway to make it look like they disappear, but like
it was exactly like that.
Oh, sorry about the laughing without context, but that caught my funny bone.
It was such a derail. Thank you, Never. I should just leave all of that in with absolutely no editing.
You'll be like, what the fuck?
No, put it in at the end.
Yeah, that'll work.
Laughter
That'll work.
at the end. What the fuck was I trying to say?
Local recording, not trusting it. Something went wrong at the end of Sweet Child of Time.
Yeah. So, yeah, I was having connection issues with Sweet Child of Time repeatedly throughout the recording. The recording ultimately took like 3 hours because it took so long to work through the multiple iterations of like I think like every hour it crashed on us.
Jesus.
So it crashed twice, like where I had to completely leave and come back. And that was after like a half hour of troubleshooting at the beginning. So I had to keep leaving and coming back. I have no idea what Zencastr was actually able to capture from me. There was like a 4-second lag. Like at the end, he wanted to do trivia, but then he was like, seems like there's a lag. Let's do a test. And we tested it. And it was like a 4-second lag on my end.
Wow.
So I have no idea what Zencastr captured. So I was really glad I had my local recording, right? And I was, bragging to Steve, like, aren't you glad I did a local recording? Ha ha ha, I'm so clever. And I looked at my Audacity, and it had a little error up that said recording was paused at some locations or something. Mm-hmm. But it seemed like the file was the right length. So I'm assuming that at some point in all of Zencastr's like wild flailing around, it like interrupted the signal for a few moments. And I don't think it was Audacity's fault. But just, yeah, all in all, I'm like...
I've seen that happen with Audacity, and what I think it is usually it misses a couple of literally bits, like, which, you sample it,
just
like...
a couple.
But
yeah,
you wouldn't notice that because it's a couple of bits, and in a second you're sampling it thousands of bits, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, and Zencastr said the reason it was having problems with me was because I didn't have enough memory available on my computer, because this is a really tiny little lightweight laptop that is not getting support, and like it's just a whole mess.
But yeah, again, that's why I use, for those of you out there who care, I use Audio Hijack. I've probably mentioned this before. It's from Rogue Amoeba. They make Mac-only software. But that's one of the reasons I'm stuck on Mac, is it's fucking reliable recording software that I never have to worry about. And it doesn't render at the end, so I never have to... If my computer crashes, everything is already on disk.
Yeah.
So everything's saved up to that point. I don't lose anything.
Yeah, I would like to get a different computer to run this station, and then I think I would try using Reaper, because I hope that at this point Reaper and Discord can play nice together, or Discord and Zoom actually, because I don't use Reaper and Zoom. I think they might play nice together.
Honestly, all three of them. The modern computer should be able to run all three without too much problem.
No, I mean like the software itself. Like way back when I first started, like Discord had weird permissions that wouldn't. But I don't even use Discord to stream now. I use Zoom. You use the Discord to stream. So like, I really want to switch to Reaper, but at this point, this computer is such an ancient, frail little thing that I just like don't even want to change anything. But it's starting to really fracture under the strain of what I've been doing for a long time. But I'm like, I'm not changing anything. Why aren't you happy now? This is annoying. But I guess computers just do that sometimes when they stop getting support or whatever. It's not supposed to matter, but it is.
Parts wear out. Software develops memory leaks. But yeah, we could talk about we should get you a new computer. Like, that's been something on the buy list for a while for you, because that computer's always struggled. And that's why you do Discord on your phone, and you can't see I forget what it is you can't see while you're recording. Isn't it like you can't see yourself or something like that?
No, I turn myself off on purpose.
Oh, okay.
Because for my own mental health. That's a perk, not a flaw. But yeah, it is why I have to use Discord on my phone. And yeah, I mean, this is just a little tiny workhorse. It's just frustrating that I can't do this one task. Like, it's starting to break down under the same task I've been asking from it for years, and it's been performing. It's starting to like throw up more errors than it used to. So all that to say, I really like there being a Zoom backup.
All right.
Anyway.
All right, I got Timbercam on.
In the sunshine, no less.
Oh, yeah.
He's
loving that.
Sacked out doggy.
Oh, that's great, Lil Jon.
Yeah, right? Fireball and then that quote. Fantastic.
You can still feel his whole hand.
I mean, they're all good. I like them all, but, some are definitely more better than others. God, so the inverse/companion podcast to Behind the Bastards is cool people who did cool stuff. And last week was George Orwell. That was the cool person who did cool stuff. And pretty neat story.
Yeah, I don't know George Orwell's story.
It's wild. He did a lot of different things in his life. Did some kind of shitty stuff. Like, he starts out literally going to Burma to be a police officer in the like British protectorate or whatever, and the experience of doing that turns him into an anti-colonialist. He like becomes like a very like staunch anti-imperialist who like works like very much for like the right side as a result of having had what many would consider to be a fine time doing like police officer work in Burma. Like, such an unusual outcome. But he wrote his most famous works near the end of his life. He died when he was only 46 because he refused to take care of himself despite being sick like his whole life. He was just like, you know what I should do after recovering from upper respiratory infections that kept me bedridden for months? I should go back to the Scotland heath and cut timber and live in a cabin. Like, what the fuck are you doing? You're so dumb. Killing yourself. Ridiculous. But he did like the works we know him for most, like near the end of his life, like in like the last couple of years of his life, like right there at the end. Really interesting dude.
Because like I just know 1984.
Animal Farm.
Animal Farm.
Yeah, 1984 and Animal Farm are the two books. He wrote a bunch of other stuff, but those are the two, and he wrote those fairly close together near the end of his life. 1984, I believe, was the last one he wrote. And then I believe this week is Dungeons and Dragons. I haven't actually started listening to it yet, but I looked at the cover, and this week is Dungeons and Dragons, which Behind the Bastards did a whole Satanic Panic episode, which of course had a massive, Dungeons and Dragons kept coming up in that because obviously. But, it's the cool people who did cool stuff take on the whole thing.
Because Dungeons and Dragons is cool.
It is very cool.
It's a neat way of visualizing gameplay and fantasy worlds and stuff like that. It's fun. All right.
You want to do this?
Yeah, I'll read us in.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?